Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our school committee meeting on Wednesday, March 17th, 2022. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you out there who celebrate. Thank you all for accommodating the change in the date. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. Do I have any changes, additions, or subtractions to the agenda? No? Okay, great. So may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right, this will be a roll call vote for attendance. Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
And Margaret Eberhardt, yes. Okay, welcome. Wonderful. We have wonderful guests and a full agenda this evening, so I will turn it over to Superintendent Jett.
Thank you, Chair Eberhardt. We're very pleased tonight to have with us our esteemed Administrator of Pupil Personnel for the Milton Public Schools, Susan Maselli, and she's here to do a presentation and give an update on the status of the special education in the Milton Public Schools. And I'll just jump right into it and turn it over to Miss Maselli. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett. Good evening, Chairperson Eberhardt and chair members of the board. It's nice to be with you this evening. I'm just going to try and share my screen, and hopefully that will go smoothly for us this evening. Can everybody see me okay on the, yep. Is this a good view? I can't really tell from my screen. Can you see it clearly, or do you need me to switch?
It looks great. It looks great.
Thank you, everybody. So welcome to our annual presentation from the Office of Pupil Personnel Services. On behalf of myself and my assistant, Mr. Mark Harrison, we want to thank families for all the support they've given us this year. It's been a really rewarding and fun year in our office. And this year we wanted to highlight for you some of the things that we've been working on. And we also wanted to bring some data to you that we know that you've been asking about, and hopefully this will be helpful. So for families that might be wondering, the Office of Pupil Personnel Services supports special education, preschool through age 22 across the whole district. We collaborate with guidance on the provision of 504 accommodation plans. For our families who are experiencing educational instability, we work with them on stability when they have educational impact, such as families who are experiencing homelessness, or families who are experiencing foster care, or families who are in the military. We support those families as well for educational stability. We support the special education transportation for students in special ed who ride on our vans. Our office also oversees homebound and home hospital education for students who are either hospital bound or homebound under their physician's care. And we collaborate with CPAC, the Special Ed Parent Advisory Council, on relevant issues related to special ed in the community of Milton. Our continuum of services for preschool through age 22 support kids in all of our buildings. Most of the students in special education in Milton receive their support through our Learning Center or academic support model, and that is commonly referred to as push-in or pull-out services. We also have a very robust strand of co-taught classes where there is a general and special ed teacher present in the classroom. Some of our students receive support in one of our specialized program strands. Here you can see that we have 4 specialized strands. They're housed in different buildings across the district, and they can support preschool all the way to high school and post-grad years. I'd like to highlight that in the fall of 2022, we will be adding to our co-taught strand at the Glover Elementary School. We currently have a classroom there for kids who have specific learning disabilities in a co-taught model. We'll be adding a small self-contained grades 2 through 5 language-based program to that building as well. When I've come to you in the last few years, I provided you with some historical trends in enrollment. We again are providing you with that information. We'll note that this year's numbers are based on just year to date as of March 1st. Special education enrollment changes throughout the year. Children are found eligible every day, every other day, all throughout the year, and children are found no longer in need of our services throughout the year. So this number moves. What's noteworthy for us is the number of percentage of students in special education is increasing in Milton. We can attribute that to a few specific things. First of all, my assistant and I have looked historically at the data, and we do wonder about how those numbers were calculated before we arrived, and we think they may have been exclusionary of parents who have chosen private school education at private expense. So that number may be a little bit low. We talked about that a little bit last year when we came. And we also know that there have been some issues that have impacted our increase. Presently, we know that COVID-related challenges have increased our numbers. We've also had quite a few number of families move to Milton who have current IEPs from other communities, and that is impacting our total percentage. But we know we're not far out of balance from the rest of the state. There is a range across the Commonwealth of 14 to 20%, depending on the community that you're in and a given year. So we know that we are within that range of other communities as well. We wanted to give you a little bit further breakdown and let you know what our numbers look like across each building. The preschool is the environment that has the most growth across the year because students are picked up and found eligible when they turn 3. So that number continues to evolve. This number is also year to date, so we expect these numbers to be different by the end of the year. But you can see over the last couple of years how the trends are changing across each building, growing steadily, pretty consistently across all environments. We're breaking the numbers down for you a little bit in a different way in this slide. Here you can see the total number of students in each category. As expected, our largest category is specific learning disability. That's very typical. That's our students that are categorized as dyslexic, dysgraphic, dyscalculia, the SLDs, the specific learning disabilities. And you can see that our trends and other numbers are varied. Depends on the students we have in front of us every year. And it is definitely an area that we're continually watching. We're going to talk a little bit about the disproportionality data in a little while, and I'll show you some of that when we get to that slide. I know that there will be questions about that as well. Here's the same information from the last slide, but just broken down into percentages to give you a little bit of a visual about what our categories look like. As we look at these numbers, we wanted to give you a comparison, and here's where you see changes. This third column is the change from 2021 to 21-22. So for example, in the category of autism, you see an increase of 16 students in that category. In the category of communication, you see a decrease of 13. That's attributable to the work we've been doing related to disproportionality. And you can see each group continues to evolve. The developmental delay category is the category that is used to support our youngsters who are 3 to 9. It encompasses many of our preschoolers. And as our preschool enrollment needs have grown, especially COVID related, we do see this number continuing to grow. You can see that our other numbers have a modest or very mild increase over the year, and that's very expected. One of the things that I know you were asking a little bit about, and we wanted to provide you this information, is the number of referrals. So this first column represents the number of referrals to date per building. And then the middle, you see the number of students who qualified, and then in the right, you see the number that didn't qualify. Now, for example, if you look at the first row for preschool, 67 referrals for preschool age children, 30 qualified and 7 didn't. So you can infer that 30 students are either in process or have not completed the evaluation process yet. So that gives you a general sense of how the referral process is flowing across each building. These numbers are a daily snapshot. We've continued to receive referrals in the last couple of weeks, and we will take and evaluate students all the way until the last day of the school year. So these numbers will continue to grow. I wanted to capture for you information that I've talked about the last couple of years, which is the number of students that move into the district who have what the Department of Ed would identify as a high level of need. These are students that might come with an IEP from another community that has a one-to-one paraprofessional or a certified nursing assistant written into it. It would also include students that come from another community on an IEP who have a self-contained IEP or a program IEP or out of district IEP. You can see that we have welcomed happily many families this year to the Milton community who have IEPs. And these are the kinds of high need students that might have a fiscal impact for the district. So when I might come to you and say that we need additional support, it might be in response to a family that's moved here throughout the year. I wanted to, oh goodness, I'm so sorry. Hold on, backing up. Sorry about that. Our out of district program are the students in special education who have a need that warrants that their services be provided as special education program outside of the district. There are 3 types of those. There are day programs, there are residential programs, and there are collaboratives. This year, we transitioned out of district, 1 student at the preschool level, 7 from the elementary level, 1 at the middle school, 5 at the high school or post-grad level. Those are students that are between the ages of 18 and 22, and 2 related to discipline removals. We also successfully transitioned 3 students back into Milton from out of district placements at the beginning of the year. And this year we have 8 students who will leave special education and graduate as 22-year-olds or as 12th graders having earned a diploma. So we've had quite a bit of movement in our students that we support out of district. Again, this is something that moves and changes throughout the year. Mr. Harrison did a great job running our ESY program last year, and he wanted to capture some of the information that you might find helpful in terms of the number of participants who participated in our ESY program and the number of students who were eligible and our percentage of participation rate. So here you can see about 75% of the families that were eligible took advantage of summer school services last year. And that ranges, from the 56th to the 79th percentile across each level. We're excited when families can take advantage of these services, and they're recommended based on a level of need. So we hope that we'll have 100% participation this summer for all of our families who qualify. Shifting gears a little bit to give you some more information related to 504 accommodation plans, you can see the 3-year trends across levels. These plans are written at the K-5 level. They're supported by our 504 team coordinator position at middle school and high school. They are supported by the guidance counselors. You can see that over the last couple of years, we've had a slow, steady increase of the number of students who are receiving 504 accommodations in the district. I did want to take one moment and refresh your memory of this slide from VVU's data presentation, and just do a shout out and thank you to the special education teachers who worked tirelessly through the entire COVID pandemic. We are excited to be able to celebrate that our students showed growth when many other subgroups did not have that success. And I attribute that to that we were back in school on July 6th. And then we had a full summer of programming. And then as the school year continued, our students were in person and back in person on November for a full day. So we're excited about these trends and growth. And I just want to celebrate that on behalf of the students and the teachers that made that data possible. Our student support teams are run by our 2 inclusion specialists. At the elementary level, that's Maureen Butler, and at the middle and high school level, it's Carolyn Mannion. These 2 ladies manage and run the SST, the student support team. This is a team that all teachers can access when they're worried about a student's performance in the classroom to receive supports and assistance and try to help that student get back on track. You can see that the number of referrals over the last couple of years has really been realized at this point in the year on some of these levels are exceeded. So what we know is that a lot of teachers are reaching out and asking for support because we have a lot of students who are continuing to struggle. Some of these struggles are related to COVID. Some of them are school attendance. Some of them are learning. Some of them are social, emotional, or behavioral. Some are mental health. We have a full range. These teams meet with teachers and try to develop intervention plans so that kids can have access to supports in general education. And then they also act as a networking way to communicate data of what's been tried when a student is referred for an evaluation in special education or 504. This year, we've seen a significant increase in the number of students who have been medically excused by their doctors and unable to attend school. Here you see the totals for the 1920 and 2021 school year and to date for this year. And you can see that at the high school level especially, we're showing an increase to be at March and already have 16 removals for kids related to medical excusal is a lot. These are kids whose physicians have determined that they're unable to attend school either due to being homebound or hospital bound. And we provide tutoring to these students. We're seeing an increase in these numbers. We want to just bring it to your attention because we know that these are students that are struggling either with physiological and health conditions or psychological and mental health conditions. We're supporting those kids as well. Equitable or proportional share is the program where we use some of our federal funding to support children who attend Milton private school at private choice. And the schools that we're currently supporting are St. Mary's, St. Agatha's, Fontbonne, Thatcher, and the Center School. So presently, our proportional share teacher supports 14 resident and 17 non-resident students in these 5 buildings. She floats around and provides ELA and math and executive functioning and work completion support. This is a federal program where we identify some of our federal funds to provide this support. We're excited that we can partner with these 5 schools. We have a great relationship with them. We talk regularly, and they are happy to have Milton resources in their building on a regular basis to support kids. I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the disproportionality work. I know that I gave you an update in November, so this adds a little bit to that. So again, we are addressing disproportionality for our students who identify as Black or African American, who have been labeled communication disability. And we are at risk for identification of the same subgroup related to school discipline. So we have a robust action plan for our students in the communication subgroup, and I'm excited to share some of that preliminary data with you. And we've introduced restorative justice professional development plan, including a coach for our at-risk category. I'm going to give you some details on each of those. So our communication disproportionality is currently supported by 1.5 teachers in the district. These are the grant-funded positions, and they support students in preschool and kindergarten, and then targeted students in 1st and 2nd grade. These 2 individuals have been doing baseline data on looking at the prerequisite skills that we identified in our root cause analysis. We're providing some barriers to accessing the curriculum for these students. They introduced the Haggerty method for phonological development, which is a specific curriculum really targeting those skills that we think kids were not accessing through early childhood experiences. And they have been able to take a look at this group and provide some explicit instruction. The 5 areas that they have been targeting through Haggerty include phoneme identification, blending syllables, final phoneme identification, segmenting, and onset rhyme. And I'm just going to show you these 5 graphs. It's pretty amazing to see the change in data since from December to March. So what you see is at each graph, the left-hand band is not demonstrating, beginning to demonstrate, or demonstrating at mastery each one of these skills. And as you compare the left-hand graphs to the right-hand graphs, you can see that students are showing less red and more green. That's what we're looking for, growth in all 5 areas of literacy support based on intervention provided mid-December until early March. So what we know is that this is great preliminary data and telling us that these kindergartners are acquiring these early phonological skills. Here are our current trends in our communication data. So you can see the number of students in the district. Again, this is taken from March 1 data. You can see the number of students in each of these subgroups and then the number of students that have an IEP from that subgroup. So we have a very small decrease. We were at 5% when we started this work in September. We are at 4% now. That number will continue to fluctuate. But what we do know is that we're aware and are making sure that youngsters in this category are appropriately identified and receiving the support they need. And we're able to show that we have a slight change in data. So that tells me that there's awareness of really looking at the kids and their needs and being responsive. So this is exciting beginning work for this. Our at-risk disproportionality is really looking at the restorative justice work that we started. We've hired a coach. She came on board in January. She has been working K-12. She's already offered an introductory professional development to all buildings and all staff. Last week, she started a 10-hour strand and has had 50 staff members join for her professional development. She's providing in situ PD for teachers district-wide. She is integrating restorative philosophy into discipline removals using these 7 core assumptions about restorative justice. She is coaching teachers and students directly and co-leading and modeling 5 to 7 proactive community circles a week for at-risk students. Everyone has received her very well, and she has really started to dive into this work, so it's exciting. And finally, she's providing one-to-one coaching to administrators and teachers and counselors, and looking at how can we integrate restorative practices into our disciplinary process. And that's her next step, is developing a rubric or checklist that will be integrated into the current practices. It's very exciting. When we take a look at our discipline removals for this year, this is the high school data to date. You can see that there are some areas we're going to be continuing to address. Students with IEPs are removed at 58%. That's very high. And you can see the other subgroups are here. The Black and African American group is still at the 22nd percentile. The white group is at the 72nd percentile. This is a high school, and you can see that there is internal, which is an in-school suspension, and external, which is an out-of-school suspension rates. And I'm going to show you the middle school, and then we can talk a little bit about the impact of that. Here's the middle school. What's noteworthy is that more students have been able to receive a discipline removal in the school versus out of the school. That's great. It keeps kids connected to content and instruction and doesn't provide a reward for their behavior of being out of school. So this has been a nice shift. So I'm really appreciative of that. As we look at the disproportionality data at whole, and in whole, we will learn from the Department of Ed as we look at this data, whether we remain at risk or whether we are disproportional. This is work that we need to continue to do. There are three basic reasons that students are removed out of school. Those are related to Chapter 37H1/2, which is possession of drugs, weapons, or fighting. And those are three things that Superintendent Jett and I have been talking about in terms of the district needing to develop diversion type programs and experiences for kids so that they have an opportunity to seek recovery from use and get back to school as soon as possible. Staff development has been a focus this past year. I mean, most of what we did last year was COVID-related professional development. This year, we've continued our work on IEP development and goal writing. As I talked about, we've been working on our restorative practices. Our middle school and high school inclusion specialist has done some positive behavior intervention training for teachers. We have offered 504 training district-wide and continuing to offer PD on use of assistive technology tools. This year, we launched our assistive tech website for the district from the assistive tech team, which talks about tools you can use to support your kids in the classroom using assistive technology. I wanted to tell you a little bit about state and initiatives that are coming up. First of all, Milton meets requirements under special ed determination with Part B of IDEA, which is a federal reg that guides our work, and you get a rating for your proficiency. We earned a proficiency of meets requirements. That's the range we look and hope to achieve. That is based on data that looks at the last 5 years of graduation rates, our annual dropout rate being low, our public school monitoring and compliance, so how well we follow the rules of special education and how well and how robustly they're implemented, problem resolution and complaint resolution, how well we respond to challenges or things that are not working well when parents are upset and make a complaint, how well we resolve those concerns. Our special ed improvement plan, performance plan, and that is the commitment from the principals and district administrators to follow the rules of special education. And then our state indicators. Last year, we finished 2 state indicators, one for preschool outcomes for students ages 3 to 5, and one for outcomes for post-secondary planning for students who transitioned out of high school and how well they achieved their post-secondary goals. And finally, we will be entering our tiered focus monitoring self-assessment this June. This will be 2 areas. The Office of Special Ed will be looking at special ed, tiered focus, and the central office will be looking at civil rights, and we will be entering tiered focus monitoring. That used to be called the coordinated program review. It will begin with a self-assessment this summer, and then the Department of Ed will be on site in the fall sometime. We don't have those dates, and there will be an opportunity for family involvement in that process. That is something that the Department of Ed sends out directly to families when they complete their focus monitoring plan. Milton CPAC wasn't able to be with us tonight, but I wanted to share some of their amazing accomplishments this year. The board has worked tirelessly to connect with principals and me across the district and really has had a robust and exciting year. You can see that they've increased their board members and building reps, and here is their website, miltoncpac.org. They are engaging more student reps and having more conversations internally at the building level. This year, they introduced meeting with principals once monthly. It's gone really well. It's very exciting. They have been participating in weekly district updates through superintendent blogs, Superintendent Jed's blogs. And they are working tirelessly on making sure that we communicate staff changes with them, and they're feeling successful about staff changes in the district, especially with all the changes we've had this year. This year, my office and CPAC co-hosted a Tourette syndrome workshop. That was a high success. We were really excited to partner with them and offer professional development. We had over 40 staff from across the district participate. It was an exciting night. We are excited to have a liaison member, Ross Danny. Thank you again for your participation at CPAC meetings. I know they have found that very valuable. CPAC has worked tirelessly to update their website and really make sure they could provide families with current and updated information related to special ed rights. They are planning a spring get-together. They will continue to have a presence at school committee. They were excited that they were able to be part of the first round for the new hiring for the new assistant superintendent. And they are really focusing on these areas here at the bottom, building relationships while focusing on staff issues, professional development, curriculum, communication, and inclusion across the district. And they're a great organization to pair with. Very fortunate to have them working on behalf of our students. And with that, I will open it up to questions and comments from the committee. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan. Wonderful presentation. So much information, such wonderful news and exciting progress for students, and just really reflects the hard work and dedication of the educators of Milton and your staff. So fire away, friends and staff members. Oh, welcome, Betty. Nice to see you.
Thank you. So I always have a question for Susan, but I'm sorry I missed most of the presentation, but one of the things I wondered about is the children on IEPs that were being removed either in the school or outside of the school. How many of those IEPs might have to do with like social, emotional, and or mental health issues that might be a factor in why that's happening at that kind of a rate that's a little bit on the high side?
So when the removal is related to the disability, the special education team gets together and talks about that and looks at that piece. A lot of these removals are related to drug use. We do not have weapons use, but that would fall into this category, and fighting. When a removal is more related to an argument or dispute between students, that's when you would see it as an in-school type response. We don't want kids to be away from instruction for those types of situations. So you're really looking at the infractions that align with Mass General Law 37.5, which is related to those three big issues, which do require a bigger response.
Superintendent Jett and then Member Rosemarin.
Yes, and I just wanted to elaborate on that because sometimes if we just say drug use, people might think it's something a lot. Basically, what's happening across the country is these cannabis oils and these vape cartridges in events. And so we understand that many of our youth, particularly at the high school level here, that marijuana is no longer illegal in some cases, and some of our students are using them. Whenever a student is caught in a building under the influence, or we suspect that they're under the influence, it then becomes a safety issue, especially at the high school level. If they're driving, we do have to call a parent. We do have to make sure. We don't always have marijuana test kits or anything like that. But from a restorative justice practice, I've reached out, brought it up at the Health and Wellness Committee meeting a while ago, reached out to Norfolk County DA's office, also reached out to DESE, knowing that this is a huge issue. Is there a diversion program that we can kind of work with students to put them in so they could understand the potential harm in ingesting some of these chemicals? And some of these things are refillable. and we're trying to encourage and educate students that you don't want to go to a street corner chemist or a street corner pharmacist, and you can't assume that these things are in good condition, and you don't know the ingredients that are being put in these things sometimes. So that is something that we're working on to try to do the education behind it. But I did want to do that, make that clarification for some of the people out there wondering what do you mean by drugs? And those are non-negotiables. It is an educational institution, and our goal is, with the work of the teachers, restorative justice coach and guidance counselor coach, hopefully we could do the mediation before it gets into physical altercations. But sometimes that spills over into school from some social media interactions, and then students meet up in school. So we're working on it, but I just wanted to share that for clarification.
Member Rosemary and then Dr. Carroll.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Maselli, for this great presentation. And a couple of things. One is I want to thank you and commend you and your staff for the results that we were seeing that Vivu shared with us before you got here, about how well our special ed students did on the testing, and what a impressive showing that was in the midst of a pandemic. And to thank you again and your team for bringing our special ed kids back in the midst of the pandemic. You were the first ones back in, and it was a courageous act in many ways that was a challenge, but you all rose to that, and it showed in the impacts on our students. So thank you all for that commitment and all that work. My one question for you is about out of district placements. We have been talking about the possibility of building a new school, which is later on our agenda. And one of the things that we've talked about is the possibility, if we were to free up some space that is not available now for special education programs that might allow us to bring some of those students back to Milton for services. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, if there's a certain category of need that you think that we might be able to address if we had the space, or age group, or I don't know exactly how you would define that, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Member Rosemary, for your kind words to the staff. I know they appreciate that. There are 3 areas where I believe we will continue to want to be talking about program development. The first one I know will ring true to you and Member Eberhardt's, which is, building more preschool, universal preschool for the district. The second thing is Superintendent Jett spoke a little bit about this, a diversion program for our high schoolers, and that could support our kids who might have the need to do recovery work, but it also could be, a program that would support some of our students with a higher level of mental health need that end up out of district. It could be a combination of those things. We did start Compass this year, but we would benefit as a district from a more robust program as time goes on, especially as we look at the needs of the pandemic long-term for a lot of our students. You saw the hospital data, a lot of that is mental health related. And the third area is really, right now the students are in upper elementary to lower middle school, students with more neurodiverse population profile, neurological combined with language-based needs. That population is currently students that we're supporting in out-of-district placements. That would be an area to continue to do some program development.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes, Dr. Carroll, go ahead.
Susan, thank you so much. I had some questions, and then a few slides later, you would answer the questions because you're so thorough. So thanks. And I especially appreciate being able to see which I know is another thing resulting from a lot of hard work, the declines in those referrals around communication great to see. And I was impressed to understand like some of what's details as far as what's going into that, and looking forward to seeing how the data continues to unfold with all your ongoing efforts there. I just had really one question, like two things that feel connected to me to most recently the discussion we've had with the warrant committee about budget and questions that have been asked. I was wondering if you could just underscore what you said to slide 18 to make sure I'm understanding what I think you explained about the equitable proportional share as far as the federal funding that supports those students, and that funding is only available to families for that specific purpose. So it's not something that we as a district have discretion over, right? Or could you just like clarify that piece, please?
Sure. So every district in Massachusetts has an IDEA grant, and that is a federal grant. And we are required to use a proportion of that grant money, because it's federal, for students who might attend school at parent choice in a private school within our community. So right now we're supporting those 5 schools. And we have students that are Milton residents and non-residents, but they're in our town going to school and they have an IEP and they're able to access services. It's not as robust as their IEP. It is determined through a very comprehensive needs assessments with all the schools, and it includes components of their IEP. It doesn't prevent a family from still accessing all of those supports in their neighborhood school, but it is a way for families who choose a private school, for example, a Catholic school experience or a Jewish day school experience. It gives them an opportunity to access some of their special ed services and not be disadvantaged by being in private school. If you're a Milton family and you attend school at a private school in Boston or Randolph, you have the same opportunity, if you have an IEP, to access proportional services through that community. So it's equitable across every town, and it's federal money, so we don't have the ability to be flexible on its use. It must be used for these things.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. The last quick question I had, the other night we went over in the budget book, in the budget presentation, some data, which is a couple of years old, but was really demonstrating how Milton's proportion, or I guess percentage of students in special education was tracking right with the state average. And so to the questions about sort of, well, where does Milton fall? And when people hear about the increases in referrals to special education, I know that we don't yet have data from these couple of years, but just to sort of confirm for the whatever audience watching this meeting, in case people were wondering that kind of where we are in Milton in relation to sort of other districts, would that still be fair to say that the increase we're seeing in Milton is a trend that other districts like ours are seeing as well?
Yes, I mean, every district right now is seeing an increase, and there are several reasons. First of all, during COVID, many schools were closed or slowing down in the evaluation process. We ourselves experienced a lag in evaluation and were able to catch up last summer. And so students were picked up during that time period. Every town in the Commonwealth has had to struggle with return to school and the impact of return to school and lost learning, and especially the mental health related issues. We're also seeing increases in our early childhood program. Students that have been home, basically home for 2 years, have lacked social exposure and experience. They've lacked robust early childhood experiences. So every town is seeing an increase in special ed. We meet with the director of special ed for the state on a monthly basis. We're talking about that as statewide directors, and everyone is experiencing that increase. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Anyone else want to ask Susan Maselli any questions? No, we're good. Yeah, Susan, I really want to thank you again for the presentation tonight. And something that you said really resonated with me when you said that you're seeing an increase in awareness and responsiveness on the behalf of educators. And that's really the key to the improvement for students and the supporting educators. And, you know, special education is a very complex, highly regulated part of education. And sometimes when we talk with the community and we talk with others, it's really hard to explain because it's so complicated with so many layers. So we really appreciate that you're able to present in this way that is understandable and really helps us to be able to communicate with the community. So thank you very much. And to everyone who works in the district on behalf of students and families.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I echo that thanks, especially knowing that this was a pivot midweek, the change in the schedule. So for Susan to be able to come, I appreciate it. And at the same time, as we move on to the next agenda item with Principal Holly Concanning and her site council members, I thank them as well in advance of their presentation for their flexibility. So I'll turn it over to you, Holly Concanning, Principal of Collycott Elementary School, for a site council presentation.
Thank you so much, James. I just want to clarify one thing. The last time we presented to you, Milton Cable Access ran our presentation. Do we need to share the screen or will Milton Cable be doing that?
If you could share it.
Sure. So Ellen will share our presentation, if that's okay, Ellen. And I also want to thank and recognize not the people on our school site council, but also I feel overwhelmed by the amount of support I see from the panelists at school committee tonight. Many of our Collycott teachers just left the building about 6:30 after parent-teacher conferences, and they've tuned in to support us. So I want to recognize them and thank them for all of their really good work. It means the world to me. So we're super lucky. And I actually want to recognize, we have an amazing school site council. We have a committee that meets faithfully monthly and oftentimes in between. Our committee is strong and many of them planned to present last night. However, we had to pivot in a moment's notice and many had plans tonight and could not attend, but I want to recognize the really hard work of our committee and also wish them, many of them, a happy St. Patrick's Day and a happy Purim. Many are celebrating now and rightfully so. So we are going to present on behalf of the committee and all of their hard work. So Ellen, are you able to share?
I'm so sorry. We are such a Google Meets district and my computer is not allowing me with my security to share my Zoom, but I'm trying to get around that.
Give me a second, I'll try to pull it up.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett. Sorry about
that. And while
that.
you do that, I'll just recognize our committee, if that's okay. I'll just begin and we'll jump in when we can. We would love a presentation, but we can pivot without it if we have to. So myself, Ellen Lohan, our assistant principal who's on right now. Also Allison McGrath, our adjustment counselor. Many of our community members know Allison as our previous team chair. Allison applied for the team chair position years ago with the adjustment counselor position in her heart and has recently assumed that position at Collycott School and has been a pivotal part of our team moving forward, supporting social and emotional health of our students. We have grade 1 French teacher Fatima Barras Alzine, grade 1 teacher Amy Gale, who's with us tonight. Amy, Gale, and Allison insisted on coming with Ellen and I tonight. We were ready to do it on our own, especially after a very long day, but they insisted on being here. So again, thank you. Catherine Peralta, our kindergarten teacher, Elizabeth Fitz, grade 4 teacher, Erin O'Brien, grade 5, Margot Tanzi, our amazing community representative, who I believe is watching from Florida today. Thank you, Margot. Christine Morrow is our PTO co-president and also a parent who is here now. And Lindsay Hudgens is a parent, Kelly Kyler parent, Nora Wilkins parent, and Amanda Dare parent. So thank you to all of their contributions. We know, and thank you, James, for sharing. We can go right to the Collycott mission, which is on slide 3. At the Collycott School, there is a clear commitment to academic excellence and high standards for administrators, for teachers, and for students. We have a dedicated and creative Collycott staff who are committed to maximizing the individual potential of each child through a wide variety of challenging activities and experiences. We strive to provide a strong academic foundation and a love for learning in a secure, safe, and stimulating environment that values individual differences. So this was something we crafted as a team and something that we tried to live by each and every day. This slide, I'm going to ask to just pause on this for just a minute because I think it speaks to the work that Susan Maselli started to present earlier, and I think it speaks to the material we'll see later with the school building project coming. So if you want to just take a look at the bar graph on the left, you'll see that this is a count of students per grade level, K to 5. You'll notice that some grades are larger than others because we are able to have more at certain grade levels depending on the year. So as you have heard Mr. Jett say many times, the buildings are built for about 500 students each. So if we're thinking about 500 students from K to 5, that should range anywhere between 80 to 90 students per grade. You can see that our lowest grade in grade 2 has 86 children in it, and our largest grade in grade 5 has 124 students. The number of classes per grade fluctuates depending on the space in the building that year. For example, this year we have 5 fifth grades. So when we graduate 5 fifth grades, it frees up a classroom for the following year. So this year I have 4 kindergartens. Next year we hope to host 5 kindergartens because we'll graduate one class of 5 classrooms. So again, built for about 500 children, we now host 614. We have 30 classrooms. So those classrooms are spread out K to 5. And then we also have 3 self-contained classrooms for specialized instruction. We house students who have significant needs and are offered ABA support through our Partner and NEC program. So again, 614 total children in a school built for about 500. And what's really interesting this year is that we've had 26 students new to Collycott since the school year started. So if you think about 26 students new to the school year, over the school year, that's a new class. Something else that's different this year is that in 5th grade, we've received 5 brand new students. And that's not something that typically happens. They keep coming and we keep welcoming them. So it's been pretty exciting. So Collycott students and staff, we strive to be respectful, responsible, and hardworking. That's our code. We start every morning by sharing our code and sharing morning announcements. And Superintendent Jett will give this a try and hopefully the video is able to share. It's just a quick video kind of summarizing the way we start our day at Collycott. Superintendent Jett, if you could unmute. Okay, I think we're going to skip the video. We weren't able to hear it, but we're on to the next slide. You want to give it a try again, Superintendent Jett? Okay, I think we'll skip the video if we can't hear it, but it's definitely something that we'll share. Basically, it is a preview of how we start our day at the Collycott. We do video morning announcements. We share our code and we share our goals for the day. And our very talented kindergarten teacher, Catherine Peralt, put that together for us. And you'll see a few different staff members starting the day in a few different languages and sharing some of the goals that we hope to work on in the week. So I would like to share with you and introduce the focus on school improvement that we have come up, we've put together as a group. So we have 3 main goals for our school improvement plan. And we try to align with district goals as much as possible and just put the flavor of Collycott into it. So number 1, of course, is academic and social and emotional growth. It's something that we are committed to and again, include in our morning announcements every single day, in our family newsletters, and also in our staff newsletters. We share common language consistently. The second goal is to arrive at mastery through personalized learning. You'll hear a little bit more about that in a bit. And then third, engagement of students, families, and staff, as well as the community with a focus on equity.
Good evening. As Mrs. Concannon shared, I'm Allison McGrath. I am the Collycott School Adjustment Counselor, and so happy to say that this is a new role for me. I have spent the last 8 years connecting with families and supporting students as a team chair. I'm also the parent of a Collycott kindergartner in Miss Peralt's class, and it truly is my absolute pleasure to be here. And thank you so much for the opportunity. So I will talk with you tonight about Goal 1, which is that Collycott staff will work to provide instruction, intervention, and programming to support academic and social emotional growth with increased opportunities for inclusion. And as a result, increased participation in school-based programs, which will result in increased academic achievement and growth. So I would love just to talk with you about a few of the opportunities and that we have here at Collycott and that you'll see listed below. It's hard just to pick a few, but I will try and be short and sweet. So we have a breakfast program. So that's a great start to anyone's day. We open the doors here at 7:50, and it really is a great way to connect with friends, eat a healthy meal, and start the day off right. Anyone is welcome. My own child has joined breakfast many of mornings, and it definitely makes the morning easier for me. We also have grade 5 student council. So this year we have 8 incredibly hardworking and responsible 5th graders who meet twice a month with myself and Miss Lohan. It truly is a highlight of my week. And this year we have met with Jackie Morgan, Director of Food Services. We've helped plan events for kindness. We've promoted activities throughout the school. Most recently, we met with Adina Schechter, who Ms. Maselli was talking about earlier. She's our new restorative justice coach. So we're really doing some great things, and it is my pleasure to work with the Student Council. We also, last month, the month of February, had our Kindness Month. So every week, students were exposed to various books and videos and challenges all month long. So if you asked one of your children about one act of kindness that they participated in last month, my guess is their answers are going to inspire you like they have for all of us. We also have Cardinal of the Week, which I'm sure many families have heard about. So this is based on the principles of PBIS, and students receive cardinal compliments for following our code. And each week, a student is then randomly selected for each grade and then presented with a certificate and a shout out in our weekly newsletter and in the morning announcements. We've even adopted this at home as a reinforcement system for my own children, and it really has great success. So social emotional lessons, I definitely want to spend a minute talking about this. This is one that's super special and important to me. So I'm lucky enough to spend time in almost all classes, K-5, on a rotating basis. And we address all different topics that are important to students and teachers related to social emotional learning. Most recently, we have discussed kindness in the lower grades to go along with our Kindness Month theme. And then in the upper grades, we are teaching lessons on gossip, and it's been really amazing to get to know students, many students in that way, and teachers. We also have our SST, which is our student support team, which is run by Maureen Butler, one of the district inclusion specialists. And this team meets weekly on Mondays with a variety of staff, really to support any concerns that a teacher may have about one of their students. And then additionally, we have behavioral health, which meets also weekly to best support any social emotional concerns that a teacher may have. So there definitely is a lot going on to support Goal 1. And if you want to advance to the next slide. So I wanted to just take a minute and take off my school counselor hat and be Allison McGrath as a mom of a kindergartner. And I wanted to share with you a family testimonial that one of our families of a 5th grade student has shared. So I shared with you that we have done the cardinal compliments, but we also had an opportunity during Kindness Month to give compliments to staff. And I can tell you I was on the receiving end of a few of the compliments, and they really did go a long way. So thank you to all those families who submitted compliments. So I'm going to share this. Let's see. Our teachers go above and beyond for their students, including supporting their after-school activities. Both teachers came to one of my son's CYO basketball games last month in their free time to support him and some current and alumni Collycott kids. They were so happy to see their teacher there, and I think the support and effort is unbelievable. They are such excellent and supportive teachers in the classroom, and for them to take time out of their personal lives to support their students is truly above and beyond. My son is lucky to have them as teachers. And I, as I said, as a parent of a Collycott kindergartner, we have been overjoyed with our son in Miss Peralt's class. I moved here because I was able to have an inside look at what the schools are like and what Collycott specifically is like. And we have truly been so happy. It is my pleasure to come to work each day and have my son be educated here. So thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Amy Gale, and I have the best job in the world. I am a first grade teacher at Collycott, and I am also a proud parent of a Collycott alum, current Pierce Middle School 7th grader. And I can absolutely echo Allison's sentiments that Collycott has set my child off on the right path in her learning. And I will forever be grateful to Mrs. Concannon and the staff at Collycott for really supporting my child and knowing my child. So thank you. And Allison, that goes for you too, because you had her as well. So goal number 2, Collycott students will demonstrate mastery of grade level expectations and beyond through personalized learning experiences. And the result that we hope to see from this is that students will engage in educational experiences that take into account the specific strengths, interests, and needs of the students. And we've highlighted some things below, including both district purchased curriculum, as well as some things that are unique to Collycott that have really helped to hone in on making children become engaged with their own learning and excited about their own learning. So you'll see at the beginning of the list, we have our clever single sign-on application that we use for even our youngest students to access apps online using their Google passwords, like Lexia. We have La Lilo in the French program. We have iReady for math and iExcel. And these are great programs because they give us targeted data that we can look at as the school year progresses. And a few slides in the future, we'll be looking at some of that data and really can really speak to how the work in the classrooms has contributed to that. And you will then notice that there are a number of things like the Collycott Cardinal Connection, which is our 5th grade newspaper that has really encouraged many young writers. And I know lots of children, my own included, have looked forward to becoming a 5th grader so that they could be a part of the Collycott Cardinal Connection. We have a toy project in 5th grade as well, where children get to design a toy based on the STEM principles that they've learned in class, as well as some of the math principles that they've learned. And it also brings in many of the literacy skills as they present these to an entire population in our gym. It's pretty exciting. We have art exhibits. We have an amazing art program at the Collycott School. And all you have to do is walk our hallways to see the beautiful work hanging on the walls. We have an amazing music program, and word on the street is that concerts will be back in action this spring. But I have to give our music and art teachers props for throughout the pandemic really going above and beyond to meet the needs of many of our students, because knowing that art and music are the highlight of these children's days, and they were able to somehow do what they do through the screen, and it was amazing to watch. We also participate in things like the Scripps National Spelling Bee, Continental Math. We have a very robust science fair that is well attended from our kindergarten students all the way through grade 5. And what's wonderful to see is middle and high school students coming back to that science fair to provide feedback for our students, and to share some of the science and STEM work that they are doing in the middle and high school. So I think a lot of what we're doing at Collycott is planting the seed for becoming a lifelong learner and really becoming engaged based on these personalized learning experiences. And if we can flip to the next slide. You will see here another family testimonial. Again, I think it speaks to the fact that what's happening in the school buildings is making it home to school. Kids aren't just coming home and saying, I went to recess today. They're coming home and sharing what they've learned with their families. And you'll see in the pictures down on the bottom, we have first graders in these pictures. And Mrs. Concannon said the other day when we looked at it, she's like, they look like college students. The child on the right, you can see him reading and writing about what he is reading. You can see the child on the left, he's working in a reader's notebook to respond also to what he's reading. And the children in the middle are really using a multisensory approach to learning their sight words. So all of the activities are so mindfully and thoughtfully planned by our teachers to ensure that not only are they building the skills that children need, but they're also engaging and multisensory. And this family recognized our daughter's exceptional teachers have given her the ultimate gift, the confidence and skills to read, learn, and discover independently. From small group readings with friends and classmates to Collycott library visits where she explores the animal kingdom, to our family all-year book club inspired by her kindergarten teacher at Collycott. Collycott continues to support our daughter's individual learning needs with her best interests at heart. And I think from the previous slide, when we talked about all of those wonderful opportunities at Collycott, those are lasting traditions in our building. And I think they have served our past students and will continue to serve our students as we move forward. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Ellen Lohan, and I am the Assistant Principal and Curriculum Coordinator here at the Collycott School, and I have the honor of presenting to you about Goal 3. So our Goal 3 is that Collycott staff will maximize opportunities to engage students and families, staff, and community members with a focus on equity. And as a result, students, families, and community members will feel more connected and have more opportunities to engage and participate in school events. And right now, it's a great time to be presenting to the community as we're at a bit of a crossroads where we have many traditions that are returning to us. As Mrs. Gale referenced, we have music concerts that are going to be returning. We were able to host an in-person science fair. We are beginning to see different assemblies returning in person. However, we've learned so much during the pandemic that we wanted to hold true to some of the things that we found at that time that worked. For example, this week, I have seen mystery readers enter into the classroom in person in kindergarten classes, but also some that came through the screen that I would say were equally as effective and were also very respectful and mindful of a working parent schedule that was able to Zoom in for a few minutes, but maybe wouldn't have been able to participate if they had to take the entire day off from work. We have many meetings with community members and with schools and families, and it's great that we are able to offer the flexibility of either virtual or family conferences. As Mrs. Concannon let us know, it's been a long day for our staff, and so we're extra grateful for all of you who are logged on or presenting with us as we had family conferences. Teachers were able to be flexible and provide a virtual or in-person conference at the preference of the family. So we're able to meet the needs of different families. I have been especially proud this year of the partnership with the DEIC committee, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. This is a group that has been meeting faithfully for years. However, I think during this time of the pandemic and the time following, it's really taken on an increased sense of rigor and excitement with the committee. This year, we're proud to say that we were able to, as an idea that came from our DEIC, host an entire family series online, which we had Dr. Kimberly Nurain, who shared her book with us, and it sparked some really great conversation. So as we are excited that field trips are returning to the Collycott School this spring, we are so excited to visit places we haven't seen in a while, such as the tour of Milton, the aquarium, the Museum of Science, Plymouth Plantation. We're excited to get back to those things, but it's been very exciting that we've been able to continue to start with some of the things we started during during the pandemic. I can say that from a school and a classroom level, communication has never been stronger with families. Many teachers who are doing monthly newsletters have switched over to weekly newsletters. So we are communicating more, and we are using the SMORE platform, which automatically translates newsletters so they're accessible to all families. So I think that we are doing some great work, and I've been here too long because the lights just went off behind me. So I had to turn those back on, but we're really proud of the work that we're doing. And if we can advance to the next slide, we can see some examples and some testimonials from families. So this is a family testimonial that says Collicott's diversity of events and celebrations has given our daughters so many different ways to engage with her school community. One of our favorite Collicott events is the annual science fair. We love that it is student driven and gives kids a chance to showcase their work to the school community. And that was submitted by the family of a 3rd grade student. And here you can see we're engaging with the community in different ways. We have a student in grade 1 presenting her science fair project. We had our parent speaker series for the Cycle of a Dream with Dr. Kimberly Narain, which was sponsored by all of the PTOs in the Milton Public Schools at the elementary level. However, it was an idea that came out of the Collicott DEIC, so we're really proud of that. And as Mrs. McGrath talked a lot about Kindness Month, you can see here that we filled a minivan twice over with soup that was donated to the Milton Food Pantry, and then actually other neighboring pantries because we donated so much soup. So these are some 5th graders who are really excited to load up that car with everything Collicott had donated. So lots of good news to share with this goal.
Thanks, Ellen. It's my pleasure to introduce the data portion of our presentation. We know you've had a chance to look at other data from other schools, and some of the MCAS data that we'll share with you now feels a bit aged, but we will share some district-wide data as well that maybe you haven't had a chance to see from other schools just based on the timing of the presentation. So when we think about Collicott MCAS performance, there are a few things that I just want to remind everybody. These scores are based on students who last year in grades 3 and 4 took the MCAS for the first time ever. So it's different. Usually by the time you get to grade 5, you will have taken MCAS 3 times. It would be your 3rd time. That wasn't the case for these students. It was also a shortened test for students. So typically there are a couple of sessions for each content area. And last year there was only 1 session for math and 1 session for ELA. So it's just different than the testing environment we've provided in the past. Again, that was all based on the pandemic, the amount of time we were in school, and determinations made by the state. So when we look at Collicott MCAS performance, this visual shows on the left, ELA MCAS, the percentage of students performing at each level. So the ELA is in the left. The math is in the middle, and the science is all the way to the right. When you look at the blue and the green, you'll see students who are exceeding or meeting expectations. If they are in the yellow, they are partially meeting, and the red would mean not meeting. And you can see that this is data over a few years. So what I'll tell you, and I've summarized it on the next slide, if you'd like to go to that, is that we're seeing in ELA, we're seeing that in 2021, 82% of our students were meeting or exceeding compared to 75% the previous year. So we are seeing progress in ELA and in science. In science, you'll see that we went from 2019, 57% of our students who were meeting or exceeding went to 69% of our students meeting or exceeding, with 3% not meeting. In math, we didn't see the gains that we had hoped to see. And in fact, we did see a little bit of a decrease, which seems to be a trend, but one that we'll address and we're working on. So we did see a little bit of a dip, and we saw that 6% of our students were not meeting at all. But we did see strides in ELA and science, and we've been thinking deeply about why that may be. And you know, in the amount of time when we were in the hybrid model and the half-day model, when students were coming to school in small groups, there was very specific targeted instruction that worked. And when we look at the science data specifically, you have to think about what happened there. How do we go from 57% to 69% meeting or exceeding? And we're still working through that and trying to understand how that good news came to be. And in reflecting with the teachers and the planning, it was very specific, targeted instruction, great nonfiction work, and committed time to science. So this data will lead us to make decisions about scheduling, about time on task, and definitely thinking about very targeted areas in regard to math. So luckily, as a district, we have fabulous tools to support students in school, but also tools for students to access at home, whether assigned by a teacher or for independent practice. So you're going to hear a little bit about, and you already heard a little bit about Lexia and iReady and Lalilo, but we'll take a look more at district-wide assessments because that's newer data for us, and it shows progress of our students from the beginning of the year until now. So we have work to do, but we definitely have some things to celebrate, and we've got a plan in place to do both of those things. You can go to the next slide.
So next, we're going to look at our iReady. So iReady is our personalized learning platform for mathematics. This is a program that students have access to through their Clever account, as Amy Gill told us about when we talked about personalized learning. However, in order for students to have access to these personalized lessons, they all must complete a diagnostic. We started with using grades 1 through 5 for the diagnostic, and that was in our first round. And actually, with reflection on the kindergarten team, they decided they wanted to join in. So they're on a slightly different cycle than us in terms of the data, but they are participating and using the platform as well. You might be noticing in terms of the percentages that there are 5 categories, but you might only see 3 colors on the screen. And you can see that in the green, as well as in the red, there's a second category with the green with the lines through it, as well as the red through the lines with it. It's hard to see on the screen, but what I wanted to point out is if we see the green with the lines through it, that is students that are above grade level 1 level or more. And we do have quite a bit of that. And you'll notice that when we see fall on the top, we have some green with the lines, but when we get to winter, that percentage is growing. The red with the lines, we actually don't see very much of here. It's very minimal. At most grade levels, it's at 0%. At some grade levels, it might be 1%. Those are students who are 2 grade levels below. So we don't have very much of that at Collicott, but I did want to acknowledge the confusion where we have 5 percentage categories and 3 colors. So that's what accounts for that. So what we can see is that throughout the year, which is exactly what we want to see, is the percentage of green is growing and the percentage of the yellows and reds are shrinking. We are seeing a lot of growth in mathematics, and actually this data is some of the data that's used that we use to target small group instruction in classrooms. It's also some of the data that is used for us to target some district-wide supports, including our Beyond the Bell program. So this is the diagnostic data, and it actually also, in addition to the teachers using this data thoughtfully, this is what sets students up in terms of their personalized platform on iReady. So all of the lessons that students access when they are at home or working in a small group or doing centers is based on these assessments. So it really helps us to get to know the student in various domains of math, including numbers in operation, geometry. We also have algebraic thinking. So we have different domains that we look at, and we get a really clear picture of where the student is as a mathematician after they take this. So we are so thrilled to see students just learning more throughout the year and those percentages of green increasing as we go on. And I'm excited to see where we are in the spring as we will administer this one more time this school year.
So as promised, I'm back to talk a little bit more about the Lexia data. The use of Lexia is twofold. One, it can be used as a rapid assessment that we use as a screener to really try to flag any students who we think may need some additional support. And also we use it as an opportunity to identify specific strengths and challenges that some students may have. There is also an accompanying program called Lexia Core 5, which, not unlike iReady, provides a personalized learning platform for children. And this serves as a really wonderful tool for children to utilize in centers, as Ms. Lohan just said, also as morning work. It's a nice calm way for them to come in, and it's something that we know children can always access independently as they are put into a level based on their rapid data. And what we have on the left side of the screen is we have our fall Lexia Rapid data for kindergarten through grade 2. And you will see the various subtests from phonological awareness down to following directions. And our youngest students come to us with a variety of reading experiences. And we find the first time they take this very often in kindergarten, which they did this year. They're just really working on that phonological awareness, learning letter sounds. And then when we look at the winter, you'll see an enormous jump in terms of their phonological awareness. Letter sound work is coming. They're beginning to read words more readily in kindergarten through 2nd grade, working on their spelling, which they only do in the 2nd grade, vocabulary, and also following directions. So this is a good news story. We really see that wherever the children came to us in the fall, we were able to provide targeted instruction and then see some really nice growth come the winter. And what's been wonderful that supported this, I think, has been a lot of the targeted work with our reading specialists, with our classroom teachers, also with a literacy coach in the kindergarten. And we have also been able to really capitalize on the use of kindergarten aides who have been trained by the reading specialist to support the assessment. So it's really nice. And I think children are seeing the educational aides not as people who really just pass out papers or make photocopies, but they are truly an educational partner that has really spoken to this beautiful growth that we've seen, that there are sort of all hands on deck in terms of supporting students. So it's really nice to see this growth. And I know, looking at my own class, you have to attribute much of it to the child, as in these early grades, they are really putting quite a bit of work into learning to read, and it's a really exciting time for them. And when they start to see that pay off, we can look at this data, but when they start to read books and they start to go home and read to their parents and they're writing stories and spelling words, it's really amazing to watch happen. And I think this gives us a nice little lens into some of the building blocks that go into that work. Now, if we can go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about 3 to 5. Keep going back there, James. There we go. Oh, one more back. There we go, 3 to 5, it looks the same. So again, on the left side, you see where they were when they came to us in September. And then again, we see some really nice growth to the winter. One of the things that I noticed in looking at this data was that the reading comprehension seems to maybe be lagging a little bit behind some of the other subtests. And I think part of that is this sort of shift from foundational knowledge to application. As you get into grades 3, 4, and 5, the students are really being asked to do much more with what they are reading. It's no longer just a focus on reading the words, but really doing something with those words. And I think this actually gives us some nice work to do around reading comprehension. And it also validates the work that we've been doing in terms of building that foundational knowledge for them. So again, a good news story in grades 3 to 5. And teachers are using this data daily. The Lexia website also gives us an opportunity to pull specific worksheets that we can target to small group instruction or put in centers. And again, you can assign specific lessons to students as needed within the program. So I think we've definitely been able to use this. And I think the growth that the students are showing is remarkable. Next slide, James, if we can, thanks. So this is just another way to look at our winter data. You'll notice that the blue, that's our above grade level readers, and our red would speak to our below grade level readers. As we move through the grades from kindergarten all the way to grade 5, the amount of blue is increasing. So the trend of the above level readers is increasing, and the number of below level readers is decreasing. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out is you will notice that in kindergarten, for phonological awareness, we only have about 11% of the students in the red. Kids are coming to us really having an understanding of letters and how they work and how they sound. And then when you see in grade 1, we jump from that to word reading, and we see 30% of the children in the red. At the beginning of first grade, students are really coming with some of their letter sounds. They're coming with some of those pre-literacy skills. But first grade is really the year that they start to put all those pieces together, which is why we might see a larger number there for word reading. But you'll notice by the time they're in 5th grade, word reading, that is really decreased to only 19% of kids in the red for word reading. And having looked at some of the words that are on that assessment, it's really asking a lot of them. I said to a group earlier, my favorite word on the first grade assessment is triage. So it gets pretty intense pretty quickly on those. So again, I think the overall trend here that we are seeing an increased blue category where children are reading above grade level, and we're seeing a decrease in the red is fantastic. And I do think that is the targeted instruction from our reading specialists, our literacy coach, our assistants in the kindergarten, and really targeted instruction in the classroom every single day. So huge kudos to the teachers for really making this data come alive for our students.
And we would be remiss if we did not mention our very robust French immersion program that has its own set of data. And what I think is interesting to point out is that although it's in a different language, you can see that in the French immersion program, they really are targeting the exact same skills that we're targeting in the English innovation pathway. You can see that students are working on decoding and comprehension, and they use a variety of different assessments to collect this data. At the beginning of the year in grade 1, they do not use the standard assessment of the GB+, which is used in the upper grades for French immersion. However, they do constantly take data in terms of running records, one-to-one assessments, and this is done with fidelity in both programs. And as we've spoke on Lexia in the English innovation pathway, it's important to note that in grades 3 through 5, it's used by students in both programs, in the English innovation pathway and in the French immersion, as in the French immersion goes to a 50% model in grades 3 and 4 and a 70% and 30% model in grade 5. So students in the French immersion program in 3 through 5 are using Lexia. At home, they have access through Clever and during the school day. However, they also have access to another tool called Lalilo. And similar to Lexia, Lalilo is an interactive digital platform that's available through Clever. So it's adaptive in the sense that students are getting exactly what they need and they can practice on the computer, both at home or in small groups at school. So we are continuing to see great growth in our French immersion program. And one of the things that we can also attribute that to is our reading specialist that works with students that using this data that you can see in front of you. For French, we don't have our winter data calibrated beautifully yet, but you can see this fall data as a starting point. And based on this data, students who are approaching or below benchmark, so those are the students in the yellow and gray categories, can be picked up for reading support. So for some students, they might be picked up for decoding skills, and some students may be picked up for a group to practice comprehension, and some students might be in both groups, or some might only be in one group depending on what they're working on. So very similar to our English innovation pathway, our teachers are looking at data, they're using platforms that are personalized learning, they are looking at students who would benefit from working with a reading specialist, and that is helping us to make the progress we need to have such a great data set to share with you. So we've talked a lot about this as we've been going around, but just as a high level summary, we can see that for iReady, the number of students that are on and above grade level has increased. And in all grade levels, the amount of students below has decreased. And we can see for our Lexia, as Amy Gale talked about, we have significant growth in all domains for students in K-2 with all of the supports in place that she outlined. And we can really see that phonological awareness had the highest level of growth. And I think that is a new focus through some of the grant money that Susan Maselli spoke to us about at the beginning, which was able to fund our early literacy coach in Mrs. Lauren Vanacore, who we're thrilled to have join us in a district position after her great career at the Glover School. And for Lexia in grades 3 through 5, we do see growth in all domains, and we do have a specific continued focus on reading comprehension in all grades. And this is something that can be targeted across the curriculum. And after consulting with my French immersion colleagues, we can say that the data does not show much difference in comparison to what we've seen in pre-pandemic time with supports in place. And Lalilo is an additional support that we've only had since 2020. And we can say that that's really helping students to make growth as well. And again, students that are below the benchmark in either reading or comprehension in grades 1 and 2 are offered targeted support. So thank you for that. And I think I see a question in the chat. And was that French data for all grades 1 through 5 combined? And no, so Superintendent Jett, if you could go back to the previous slide for me, if you don't mind. I'm so sorry, with the way the screen is shared, Dr. Carroll, it's cut off, but actually the first decoding that you see all the way to the left is grade 1, and it goes 1 through 5 in each domain. We'll share this presentation with you, but the way that it's sharing the grade levels at the bottom are cut off. But this is just Collicott specific data, and it's for grades 1 through 5 teased out, and we can share that presentation so it's easier for you to see all the parts of it. That's a great question. I think we're ready to move on to the next slide, Superintendent Jett.
Thank you, Ellen. So we have absolutely probably learned more in the last 2 years than we've learned in all of our training to become educators. And we've learned that there's nothing that we really can't handle. And again, I want to credit the Collicott staff for being willing and open. And if everybody could just take some time to reflect on how far we have come because of this pandemic, I don't think we ever would have learned as much as we have if we didn't absolutely have to, because we would have had to create time to take classes and time to explore technology. But this happened to us, and I will say the Collicott staff handled it with grace. We tried to handle it with humor at times, although there were tears at times as well. But you all were determined, you were courageous, and I believe you did great work, and you continue to do great work. So we know that necessity has taught us to serve others in a more competent and efficient way. And as many of our routines are returning, and they are returning, it feels almost like normal times these days. But we will continue to use strategies that we developed during the pandemic to support students and families. So we have moved from using our PA system for morning announcements to videoing them. So we film them the day ahead of time, and we share the link with teachers so they're able to share those with their students at a time that works for them, so it doesn't interrupt instruction or interrupt our neighbors who used to hear about our birthday students. They don't hear that anymore. I think they're grateful. We continue to share our newsletters using the SMORE platform, which is accessible in any language with the click of a button. In the old days, I would push out our newsletter in the 3 languages determined by our home language survey. Now, I save my time because I put it out in English with the opportunity to go to any language that the family prefers. We continue to offer virtual or in-person family meetings, not just tonight for conferences, but on a regular basis. Most of our IEP and 504 meetings are still happening virtually because it's convenient for a working parent. We have joined with the district to do a diverse reads book club. Using the technology we have, we're able to access some really cool district-wide assemblies, which is not only time efficient, but also cost effective. We will continue our virtual DIC meetings. We've noticed great participation by offering them virtually at a nighttime setting. And we will increase and use technology for personalized learning. In the old days, 2 or 3 years ago, we would have families in to support technology in 1st and 2nd grade because students would need support in logging on and things like that. We don't need that anymore. These kindergarten and 1st grade children are very well versed in logging on and accessing the platforms that we shared with you today, as well as many other amazing things. We'll continue to offer volunteer opportunities, both in person and virtually, as Ellen spoke about. Just this week in kindergarten, we saw mystery readers in person and through the screen, again, opening opportunities to people. We also celebrated Digital Citizenship Day at Collycott School. In every single grade level, we had content that was appropriate for students in every grade level, and we had families come join us for a few hours or for just 30 minutes from a workplace. And the virtual assemblies are allowing children to access material that maybe would have been much more expensive in the old days with in-person assemblies, but we're accessing grade level content from the Museum of Science. And again, saving time in the classroom. We don't have to travel anywhere. So again, time and money is being saved with our virtual opportunities. We still have some work to do and we have some next steps. We will continue to provide additional interventions called Beyond the Bell. In addition to February and April vacations, Collycott offers an amazing CAS program. That's the Collycott after school sessions. We offer anything from yoga to nail painting to diamond painting to kickball and bowling. Rubik's Cube, again, these have been driven by student choice. And again, student choice is based on student voice. If we know what you need and what you want, we've offered a class for that. So, there were some very specially designed classes to meet the needs of student interest and just a whole lot of fun for kids to extend their school day without having to commit 5 days to the after school. We will continue to provide consistent practice in all content areas. Very rigorous instruction is being planned by our teachers and families at home. Remember that you have the opportunity to use the platforms we discussed tonight at any time, 10 minutes a day, whatever you choose is right for your child. Please continue to access those platforms the district has invested in because time on task will make a difference in your student performance. We will continue to meet students where they are, offer them what they need. We are trying to be as personalized as possible. We want to know students. We want to offer them the opportunity to receive intervention, but also enrichment. So we will continue to use the teams that we talked about, student support and behavioral health. We'll continue to maximize the benefit of our specialty staff, having an inclusion specialist, having directors of math, science, ELA, restorative justice, and reading specialists is a gift, and we appreciate that, and we will maximize their impact by including all of our educational assistants and professional development as much as possible. We will continue to pursue professional development for all, including the educational assistants. And we are returning to some really great historical enrichment practices that we've done at Collycott, which include Math League, field trips, family volunteers for math games and specialty classes. That's on our list of things to get done before the end of the school year. We've just started Meet the Artists again in the last couple of weeks. Families are coming in. We are excited to say that we do have art shows in our calendar, and we have potential dates for grade level concerts provided by our music teachers just today. And again, we're going to maximize participation in the platforms that we have to continue to support student growth. So we have a lot to celebrate, but we have clear areas to improve. And with your support from the school committee and also from central office and our amazingly generous PTO and the MFE, we have what we need to do great things. So we hope to continue to do that with your help. So thank you for listening to us. I know it's been a little longer than expected. And to all the school committee members, I know you have this link in your email somewhere, but I hope you get a chance to watch the video because it really summarizes nicely the way we start our day and the culture that we hope to set at Collycott. So thank you.
Thank you, Holly Concannon. I see Member Ross Denny and then Member White.
Good evening, and I want to thank everyone from the Collycott team who hung in there for a second night and was able to attend. It's a nice thing to see on a Thursday after it's felt like a very long week. I'm very grateful that you started with what good things came out of the pandemic and giving families ways to participate virtually. As a working parent, anything that allows me to still feel like I'm being a good mom is a wonderful thing. So having those virtual parent meetings, as well as the diverse reads and volunteer opportunities, mean a lot. I'm also very pleased that I think you're the final elementary school presentation. And what I've seen in the formative assessment data defies reason. I know a lot of people came in to this school year thinking about unfinished learning and whether or not the teachers could get the students to catch up and learn what they didn't learn. And it felt like a gamble and it paid off. You should be very proud of what you've been able to accomplish in several months of back to school. It's phenomenal. And seeing so few red bars, that decline in red, means a lot to me. I do have 2 follow-up questions about the red, and I know it's very small. So let's start with that caveat. What do you know about those students? Who are they, and maybe any sort of profile? And then the second question related to those students is, what do you think it will take to make it even smaller? Is it just a matter of time? Have you learned anything this school year that might cause you to change the interventions for those kids to see if something different will work for them? And thank you.
For Rosteni, I can speak a little bit to the students in the red that you've noted. Specifically, are you referencing the students with the 2 lines, the smaller, that very small group?
Yeah, I think it was the math group. And
Yeah.
I know it was a different color for Lexia, but the same premise is still there. It's a much smaller number in it. I will be the first one to concede that, but I'm sure there's something we can all learn from that data.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you asked that question because it is something that we talk about in common planning, at student support team, and in a lot of our different groups. One thing you may have noticed in our first school goal is that inclusion is an increased goal for our school. And we are lucky enough to house 3 sub-separate programs here at the Collicott School. One that is a direct partnership with the New England Center for Children, and then 2 classrooms that are Milton teachers that focus on a very specific population. Because we have these personalized learning platforms, in order to access the content on these platforms, it's often necessary to take a diagnostic assessment. And some of these students are students who are not, their IEP does not dictate working on grade level standards in an inclusion classroom every single day. However, when families reach out to us and say, what is a great program for them to use? We know the district has spent considerable money and research looking into Lexia and iReady, and that they're excellent programs. So we want the students to have that. So some students they don't spend much of their day in, say, a typical 3rd grade classroom. They'll be working in a sub-separate space, but in order for them to use, say, iReady at home, they do need to complete the diagnostic, and sometimes that might bring them to be a couple grade levels behind. But we think that we will, chunk those assessments out in really manageable ways so the student can take it over a time that's appropriate for their attention span and developmental rate, and with the assistance of a 1-to-1 at times. But we do think that this data is powerful, and as students are using these platforms more at home and at school, we are seeing growth. So that does speak to some of the students that you would see. And for other students that may be on an IEP for something else, some of this data isn't surprising. And we know that they are working with their classroom teacher. Many of the students who are behind were invited to our February vacation Beyond the Bell, and they'll be continued to be targeted for school interventions and summer interventions. So we have a great pulse on who those students are, and the teachers know, but the majority of the students are students who are in sub-separate classrooms. But we're thrilled that they have all of the same tools through Clever as their grade level peers.
Thank you. That was a great answer.
If I could just add a little on to that, I was so proud just a few days ago. This week, there's been a lot this week. Just putting that out there. During our learning walk on Tuesday, when Superintendent James Jett and Assistant Superintendent Janet Chan came to see our classes, we didn't really have a schedule or any designated spaces to go. We said, we'll just walk in and out. Wherever we land is where we land. And during that time, we ended up talking about specific students and what's happening. And it was great to say out loud how much our inclusion opportunity has increased with the student population that Ellen just described. So every school has a specialty, and at Collicott, it is our partnership with the New England Center for Children. which is a program that is growing and growing and growing and keeping our children in Milton rather than getting on a van and going to Southborough. So it's amazing. But what was especially great about our learning walk is that we were able to see some graduates of that program in the upper grades because of really great intervention in the primary and early elementary grades. We're seeing some students come out of the program in 4th and 5th grade with support. But on top of that, it's important to say that we have more students included on the traditional MCAS test than we've ever had before. So when it comes time to take the MCAS, you have a choice. Well, not a choice, but you have a designation to take the traditional MCAS or an alternative. And more of our students are being pushed to participate in the traditional MCAS test. And it doesn't always, show glowing results, but it shows excellent participation and an experience that prepares them for the next time to participate. So the increased inclusion may show data that is not blue or green. We may have some more red data, but in some cases, the increased participation is more of a celebration.
Member White, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you for this really wonderful and thorough presentation. It really gives you a feel for what your school is like, and so it seems like a really wonderful place to learn. And I think that looking at the data that you shared, it's both very encouraging and exciting to see the growth that the students have made through all the different grade levels. But I have to tell you that I'm not terribly surprised by that, given the fact that the foundation of which you focus your schools on with the social and emotional learning and the slides on kindness and the classroom lessons that Allison spoke about, it really is the fabric of your school. You can feel it that the kids walk into that building every morning, whether they start at breakfast or whether they just go right to the classroom, they feel cared about, they feel connected, they feel part of your school, and that is the foundation for their success. So because of that foundation, I'm not surprised that the kids are doing so well and have had such great success, given all that we have been through with all the pandemic issues. So kudos on a great job, and what a wonderful staff you have to work with. Holly, you must be here. You have one of the best jobs in the world, I think.
Thank you, Betty. And I think it was great to hear Allison and Amy say that they have the best jobs in the world, because both of them have followed their hearts at Collycott and transitioned to the job of their dreams. And I think because we have a committed and happy staff, we're able to do great things every day. So thank you.
Dr. Craig?
I wanted to say a couple of things. One is that to thank you all for the very thorough and data-rich presentation. I wanted to thank Susan Maselli for her very thorough presentation as well, but things were going on at my house at the time. So thank you, Susan, if you're still on there. I was especially heartened by the slide that Amy Gale presented on K-2 gains in Lexia Rapid from fall 21 to winter 22. Is that it? Yes. Because that grade level is what has, sort of kept me up at night during this whole pandemic, and worried about learning loss with reading at that level and how foundational it is to being able to learn anything, really. So that was really encouraging to me. I just had one question, and that is your 3 goals. The third one was developing a sense of community. Your presentation had tons of examples, which I just love. And thank you for not taking them through every single one of them, because we're going to be here till after 10 anyway. So, thanks. I need the sleep. This is definitely, as who said? Oh, Bev. It has been a long week already. Question was, how are you developing that stronger sense of community or making people feel more welcome? How are you going to measure that, given your emphasis on data in the other areas? I'd like to hear a little more about that. Thanks.
So it's a great question. It is something that's hard to measure with specific number, but if I were to measure it in the way I felt this morning with the level of engagement of families outside of our building, to greet our bagpiper this morning, it's a Collycott tradition. We have a huge Irish community and one that we continue to celebrate. And the amount of families who came to attend today to just start the day with us was amazing. The amount of parent volunteers I've seen in the building this week for Meet the Artist, for Math League. Math League is on Friday, so last week. But also the amount of people we had in for our celebrating our differences in fourth grade. We're starting to see people. And not everybody can come and attend or has the confidence to do so. But when we talk about the Collycott Cardinals of the Week, and when we put it out for the staff, the amount of response we got, and I'm sure, Ellen, you know the exact number of how many Cardinal compliments we got for staff. It was amazing. So people are engaging with us. We also are able to see how many people read our weekly newsletter for families. And so the statistics on who is reading our newsletter is very high. I love that feature of SMORE. People are paying attention. I try my best only to communicate to families on Sundays Sunday evenings is for the families. So they know to expect that my email is going to come Sunday, and hopefully everything they need for the week is in that email. That's how I communicate. So I'm able to measure that with true statistics, but I guess trying to measure our goal for number 3 is something that we really need to consider. It's hard to quantify. Attendance at meetings, we always look at. We try to offer meetings in the morning and in the evenings, virtual and in person. And I can't really nail it down yet, the perfect time to have it, but I do know at DEIC, the virtual piece at night after dinner is the best. I know PTO is very well attended when I have a coffee in the morning. So it's really hard to commit to one thing. So we're going to continue to offer varied ideas, but the true measurement of that is something that we'll, as a team, have to figure out how to quantify better. You just gave me something to add to our next step list. Thanks.
Sorry. Thank you.
Remember Rosemary?
Okay, thank you. I'll try to make this quick, but one thing that we have the advantage of seeing over the course of the school year is as each of our schools comes in and does these presentations, we've really gotten to see this wave of opening up as the pandemic is subsiding, and just that feeling of opening and things happening again is just it's heartwarming, and we're so happy to see that, and I'm sure that you all are as well. And I think that we're coming back to a new normal, and I'm pleased to see that you've recognized and incorporated many things that you've learned in the pandemic, and the virtual opportunities for families to participate. And I don't know whether I was wondering about when you're talking about data for that goal of yours, that has participation changed in any way by offering remote virtual opportunities for families to participate in parent-teacher conferences? I don't know if you've
today it was funny. We had all the teachers share their schedules with us, and the schedules came with virtual links as well as in person, so we could see teachers going in and out of both. And the spring conferences are typically optional, However, I can tell you kindergarten, first and second grade, I think every parent was in attendance today. So I definitely think people who may not have been able to participate in the past because of leaving work for the day or things like that definitely had the opportunity to participate. I also just, as we were thinking, we do have some forms of measurement for goal number 3 on the student side. For example, we have, an SEL screener, we use IntelliSpark, and we have data on that. We have very specific questions for students right now that we can look at. Would like to continue to maximize that resource and perfect it. We're just really getting to know that. But we also have, in some of our grades, especially in 5th grade, we use an SEL form weekly for students to check in with their teachers. And that is also a way to measure the student piece of that. But I think that we need to continue to think about how we assess the family piece of that goal.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Chair Abahat.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett, and thank you, Team Collicott, for this incredible presentation. So just a few things. I think there's a book out there, Lessons from the Pandemic. Somebody needs to educator needs to write that book and donate the money to some fabulous cause for students and families, because all of the site councils have really reflected on that, and that's really heartwarming. And Holly, when you talked about the fact that everyone was sort of pushed into this, and we would have had to make time, and we would have had to find classes, and we would have had to figure it out. Well, guess what? We had to figure it out and move at the same time. And that you spoke to, that was it was really reflective. And I think all the teachers should get a big hug, as we say in preschool, and a pat on the back for that. And the families too, right? Because we all had to move and learn at the same time. You guys did a really excellent job in helping people understand personalized learning. I think it's sometimes hard to explain personalized learning to people, but the way that you presented it tonight in your presentation really captured what that means, what it means when you say personalized learning, and how that is reflected to students, and how you can understand that as a community member. Understand when we talk about that as an important piece of the district's goals moving forward. I loved what you said, whoever said that what's happening at home, what's happening at school is making its way back home, because I really think that speaks to the student's experience and that connection. Those connections are building, and that is the important piece of measuring. You can see that through those notes you got, right? That engagement is increasing through the connections that you're making. And you really almost brought me to tears when you talked about the red growing because of inclusion, because that is powerful words. And just keep up that work, because we all know that inclusion for all students is what makes a difference in the long term, especially for students with identified needs. And February and March has many days to mark different disabilities and different learning neurodiversity and days to celebrate that. And I just really wanted to thank you for pointing that out, and for really making that part of your presentation. It really did almost bring me to tears, because that's my daily work. And I believe in that with every piece of who I am. And just thank you all. I just can't thank everyone enough. In the district, sometimes we hear a lot when we go to other meetings about what kind of district we are, but these kinds of presentations reflect that we are an incredibly dedicated district of educators, community members, students, families across the board. Yeah. Thank you.
Dr. Carroll.
Sorry, I just don't want to miss the chance to chime in with my sincere thanks as well, and just appreciation for everything that what you presented represents day in and day out. And also just noticing the connections between of course, I just started talking, which is why Julia has to walk in. My background is blurred today. So just pointing out the connections between that personalized learning piece, which is how students achieve excellence on their own terms, but it's connected to the safe and supportive learning environment, and your goals are all interconnected. And the testimonials that you shared, I thought demonstrated how those connections are so nuanced and important, and students feel safe and supported when they receive that personalized learning. And I'm just so really grateful and excited that these platforms are paying off in these ways. And so it just I think speaks to what wise investments these have been. And thank you for making such good use of them.
So I would close, but I would be remiss if I didn't give Holly an opportunity to brag for maybe 30 seconds about your FBS and the accomplishment they had. How are you going to go through this presentation and not give us a highlight on that? Future business.
I can't, well, it's breaking news. So we actually finished the presentation before we got this, but we have a grade 5 teacher, Anna Curry, who actually is in attendance tonight. I think you're still here, Anna. Hi, Anna. Anna is a grade 5 teacher who works 70% of the day, which means that she has a little time to do something extra. And so she coaches our future problem solving team. And she also coaches the team at Cunningham. She's done this for a few years and has great experience with that. And future problem solving is content that is introduced to all 4th graders. And then at the end of 4th grade, they have the chance to apply to be on a team. And they give up to work on problem solving skills. And the Collicott team, 3 students, Zeke Leary, Ben Nass, and Luke Powers. Congratulations to these 3. They've made it to the qualifying round. So they will move on and compete with other teams across the state. Yes, it's like really exciting. They're really great kids who work very hard under the leadership of Anna. So thanks for bringing that up. And since you give me a chance to speak, I have to say, I really want to commend the teachers who didn't throw in the towel and give up when times were really hard. I know that we had a few teachers and we had some veteran teachers who were toying with the idea of maybe, taking some time off while we worked through this really difficult time in our world, and they didn't. And not only did they not give up, but they've learned more again in the past 2 years, and they are killing it with technology, with links, with student engagement and family engagement. And I think in some ways we could look at the opportunities that we've had to go through a pandemic as a gift, because they really have maximized so many of their abilities. So I just really want to commend those teachers who didn't give up and thank them for their hard work.
So thank you, Holly, Eamon, Ellen, Allison, am I forgetting someone? But I just want to thank you guys for your presentation and keep up the great work. And that sentiment extends to the entire Collicott team. Thank you all. Okay, you guys are more than welcome to stay on if you want. If not, enjoy your night. Very quickly, under the superintendent's report, I know you heard a lot about the data and things like that. And I think what's building the culture and restoring that school feel, that climate, is restoring back to some of the activities with concerts, senior trivia night last night in the cafeteria at the high school. We talked about future problem solvers. We had the Tucker Championship basketball game last week. There was a lot of excitement for the Tucker community. So things are coming alive and we're moving forward. And we're looking for a great end of the year and really use this year as a springboard to do bigger and better things next year. So, I mean, I'm not going to go, we're about 9 o'clock right now, and I know we got a couple of other presentations, but I'd be happy to update people on more things that are happening in Milton Public Schools. Be on the lookout. I know there's been a lot of conversations about what schools and colleges the students are talking to. Last night, I just bumped into 4 students going to the trivial, senior trivial night. And out of the 4 students, the colleges that I heard, American University, Columbia, Brown, and Tufts. 4 students that I just ran into. And then we had young ladies going to BU. And, you know, so there are great things happening. And they said, you know what, Mr. Jett, it has been a good thing. Teachers have done some great jobs and we have a good class. And I think I shared this with Dr. Carroll earlier. I said, no, it was an exceptional class because your sophomore year ended fully remote. Your junior year was hybrid. And your senior year started out a little uncertain as well. And here we are, you're going off to some of the most prestigious colleges in the country. So I just wanted to share that with people because when everything's said and done, it's about the success that students experience all throughout the Milton Public Schools for those K through 12 and for those who are moving in at various points in their educational career, and they're finishing off very strong at Milton High School. So it's a culmination of all the work of all of the teachers and support staff. And I extend that to our food service personnel, custodial staff, librarians, adjustment counselors, guidance counselors, and administrative assistants, everyone across the board, because we all have a hand in it. And I can't thank them enough. In the sentiment that Holly said specifically about a building, I think it extends to all of them. And then my final thanks goes to the families who really were patient, supported, frustrating at times, just like it was for all of us, but you stuck with us. And hopefully now we have mask optional. We're not in a hybrid, we're in school. Hopefully as a community, we could start looking at coming together despite our differences in opinions and really focus on what is best for our students and their experience. So I yield my time to that. And I just want to thank everybody who's been involved, in you as well as school committee members, because as volunteers, I know a lot of frustration was aimed at you guys as well, but you guys hung in there and I greatly appreciate that. So kudos to everyone involved. Thank you, and I would yield my time at this point.
Yeah, well said. Thank you, Superintendent Jett. And thank you, Polycott team, Sue Maselli. We are indeed a lucky community to have such dedicated educators and families and staff. All right, school building committee, we know you have been waiting for your time. Thank you to you guys, sorry. You know, I only have one more meeting and I promise the next person, Ada, you have to be like, all right, y'all can think about what you want to do for your meetings in the future. They can be shorter. Sorry, Ada, I've turned it over to you.
Thank you, Margaret. My connection is a little funky, so I hope I will be able to stay with you. I hope you can hear me. But I'm pleased to return and bring back with me the chair of the school building committee, Sean O'Rourke, to speak with you tonight, as well as Principal Concannon from Collycott School and Principal Fish from Pierce Middle School to join us to talk about the school building project and the possible grade configuration for our new school. It's been 3 years now. The school building committee has been working, and there's been a lot of work done, and it feels like things are starting to come together in a way that things are moving quickly. And it's exciting to bring to you an update. And I won't, without further ado, I'll pass the ball to Sean O'Rourke, and off we'll go. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Ada. In light of time, I'll jump right into the presentation. So let me share my screen. And just let me know if that came through. Perfect, thank you. So, quick agenda for kind of what we wanted to cover tonight. Brief introductions, mainly for the audience that's on the phone that might not be familiar with us. Then we're going to cut over to kind of our overcrowding video that some of you may have seen, and if not, we'd like to play that for you. Jump into a presentation to kind of recap some of the material we presented to you previously, and also update some of our community and staff engagement and some of the outputs from that, and then jump into whatever question and answers you may have. For those of you who are not aware, our makeup of our committee is made up of 9 members. The 5 of us at the top were appointed by the town moderator. We're a mix of design and construction professionals. At the bottom left are members of your committee, Ada and Betty, member Rose, member White. And on the bottom right are members of the select board or appointees by the select board, with Mike Zulis being one of the members. So now, I'll cut over to our overcrowding video. Ada, myself, and the rest of the committee had worked on this tirelessly to kind of give people a view of what's going on behind the walls. A lot of people look at the schools, and as everybody knows, they look great from the outside. However, the interior of the schools, we know there's a different story going on there. So if I may, I'll try to switch. And there, and a note for Holly, I found with Zoom, when you're sharing video, there's a tab at the top that you have to share the audio with it too. So I believe it's under the more portion. So if you just give me 1 second, share sound. And if you give me a thumbs up once. Thank you.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, you guys are here to film The Pinch, right?
One of the biggest challenges I see is the overcrowding. In an ideal situation, particularly at your elementary levels, you would like to keep class sizes no more than 18.
Sorry,
The
Sean.
video's not playing.
Individualized
Don?
attention.
Yeah, the video's not playing, sorry.
Oh, we can hear the audio.
We've got sound, but no video.
We just see the slide that says overcrowding video.
So maybe you need to reshare your screen or something.
Correct. I think it was yeah,
Like a different tab.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Learning something new each time. New share. Yeah, correct. It was just sharing the PowerPoint slide. Here we go. Sorry about that. Better? Perfect.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, you guys are here to film The Pinch, right?
One of the biggest challenges I see is the overcrowding. In an ideal situation, particularly at your elementary levels, you would like to keep class sizes no more than 18 to allow for our teachers to give individualized attention.
You can definitely see that there are spaces that are smaller, there are spaces that are gone. So if you want examples, if you think of the library, we have a classroom of second graders, which also happens to be our biggest second grade classroom, in a space in the corner of the library where there used to be extra shelving for books.
Art room, but the music room, allowing for some space to sing, really was just too small. So as you'll see, we've actually now converted our gym. We've split it down the middle with the curtain, and half of the gym is being used for music 3 days a week, and the other 3 days a week is being used for PE.
Up in our library, what had been our maker space, which is a big space of our library, is now being used as a digital classroom for our Fuse and technology classes, which you know, on one hand we've been fortunate to have a little bit of space to create another classroom, but you know, that kind of came with the loss of the maker space too.
So our music room we were able to preserve it up until this year. But this year we had to transform our stage in the cafeteria into a music room. We had to take all of the instruments that are usually stored and on display for children to access, and we had to put them in a closet.
And that does create a bottleneck. That does take up time, which means the teachers leave earlier to make sure that they have enough time to eat, which cuts away from, you know, core academic time. And there's sort of no way around it because you're cutting something and you want to make sure once they get in the cafeteria, those lines, you know, they have enough time to actually eat before they go to recess. So you can't fault the teacher for leaving earlier to get them in there because all of that takes more time because more classrooms and more students are going into those spaces.
We often hear from students and families that one of the most stressful times of the day was lunchtime. You know, students have about 20 minutes to find their way, find a seat, get their lunch, eat it, in what was a borderline sort of hysterical environment where you
choreographed their day in such a way that we are sort of smoothly moving a lot of children through very cramped and tight spaces.
I mean, as far as our teachers, it's cramping their space. It's very difficult to break up into small groups when you have 28, 29 students in the class.
We've given up a lot to provide great services for our children, so it feels great to be able to do that. What we sacrifice is quality of planning time and locations for our staff, the opportunity to find a quiet place for planning. Planning with colleagues is sometimes not so easy. It's not easy to find that space, but we're working together. We're figuring it out. We're very grateful to be in beautiful buildings, but if I'm being honest, I have teachers sometimes taking meetings from their car.
And when you look at the current enrollments in the 4th and 5th grade now that are nearing 400, ballooning the size of teams to 125, 130, 140, what your class sizes are going to be enormous. You're going to be talking about 28 to 30 students in most on-team classes. So math, imagine classrooms of math and English and science and social studies with pushing 30 students in there.
We are continuing to grow. Like, just as a point of note, when I started at Tucker, I believe we were at 350 students, and we're about 470. And that's just within our 8 or 9 year time span. So we've grown pretty dramatically, and I don't think people realize that.
Have an issue that we have to confront in terms of our enrollment, and the status quo of both from school building, physical plant, as well as personnel and programming, are going to have to evolve with our enrollments and with the complexities that come with that, if we're going to be able to continue to offer our kids and families the same high quality education that the students have enjoyed.
Jump back to my presentation. If you just confirm you've seen the presentation again, perfect, thank you. So, the video there kind of highlights a lot of stuff that we've talked about graphically. So just to kind of recap some of the graphs that we've seen previously. The enrollment since the schools were reconstructed or rebuilt back in 2008, as you can see, has grown dramatically. What you're seeing here is pre-K to 12. The projections even further long-term have them, for lack of a better word, a steady state or leveling off. But a lot of that takes into account, as we mentioned before, projections from NESDEC that we found to be very conservative. They also don't account for any of the future construction projects that aren't permitted. As we're well aware from, the past couple nights at town meeting, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming down the line. This graph basically takes the data for pre-K to 5th grade, and I use, as an engineer, I try to look at things differently. So what I did here is kind of flip the graph around when I was working with all these and drive my other committee members nuts. And here you see the grade enrollment on the vertical axis. So from 2007 to 2008 on the base up to the present day. And then across the x-axis is the enrollment population for the students. And as you can see, it grows, every year is about a 2% increase compounded. The vertical yellow line there is the capacity of the school buildings. You heard Holly mention earlier, it was about 500 for hers. So as we added up all the buildings, that's what we had. The district architecture, as you're well aware, consists of 4 elementary schools that feed up to a single middle school and feed up to the high school. So initially, from the output from the DRA study that looked at it, talked about the construction of a new elementary school. And initially, as a committee, we focused on this. We developed an SOI and submitted it. That SOI was not accepted by the Mass School Building Authority last year, nor this year. And it kind of gave us some pause to look at things a little differently and say, are we doing the right thing? Are we going to create a 5th middle school that feeds up to a single middle school? And then also create a brand new elementary school and have to redo the other 4 existing schools to kind of bring it up to the same parity. And then the biggest issue that came up is, we were discussing is, redistricting. So as you're aware from previous presentations, we've looked at a option here. It specifically came in once we started identifying the site of creating an upper middle school at the high school campus. And we'll talk about the land a little bit later. What it would do is reconfigure the elementary schools by stripping out the 5th grade and the preschool and removing them up. So the 5th grade would move up to the Pierce. The Pierce would now go from housing 3 grade levels to 2 grade levels, basically providing space there. The new middle school would be sized appropriately to handle the 7th and 8th grade along with the preschool wing. And then some of the space that we free up at the middle school, the existing Pierce Middle School, we could use some of the district offices at the high school and relocate them there, further providing additional capacity at the high school. At the elementary schools, by stripping those two grade levels out, as you'll see in the coming slides, we kind of address the space there. So this one option addresses space capacity on all levels of the district. So graphically, from the one that I presented before, we looked at it and said, if we took the 5th grade and preschool and stripped them out, what would it look like? And as you saw before, it basically drops us below the building capacities and essentially provides breathing room. When we looked at, that was graphically, we physically looked at the students and what they're occupying in the buildings right now. So if this year we were to do this, we'd free up 16 classrooms that are currently occupied by the 5th grade and 8 preschool classrooms. So when we weighed that against the shortfalls that were done as part of the DRA study back in 2019, which was a space study conducted by your committee, we check all the boxes. Basically, every shortfall that was identified there, we addressed with this option. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Ada to kind of touch on a little bit about grade configurations.
Yeah, so one of the first things that we did was to look at what does the research tell us about grade configurations, and read quite a bit of research, and basically the research is mixed on it, but what we have here are 3 of sort of the key points. One is that there is not a particular sequence of grade spans that's perfect, or it self-guarantees student achievement and social adjustment. But the second being that addressing the transitions that students go through when they move from one school to another, and that with those transitions, there comes a risk of relationships and learning being disrupted, so that anytime we have a transition in students' participation at one school to the next, we have to really be thoughtful about how we're going to support that transition being a smooth one, and for both students and their families participation. And the third is that there's little empirical research supporting a certain grade range or configuration, and many schools are left doing what they can or try to do with configuration. So there's basically not a rule of thumb around what to do. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. The next thing that we looked at is what's happening in other public schools around Massachusetts. And there are varying grade configurations, as you well know. But just to give you a sense of how many schools around the state are using what types of grade levels and grade configurations. And as you can see, the most common configurations are the ones that we have right now, the pre-K to grade 5 and the 6 through 8 for the middle school. And then the other grade levels that we looked at are the K to 4, pre-K to 4, and there are a fewer number, but still 132 of those. The schools with grades just 5 and 6, there are only 4 other schools of those in the state. However, it means we wouldn't be alone in doing this, but it's a unique option for us to consider. And then going down to grades 7 and 8, there are fewer of those as well than the 6 to 8, but still dozens. And then the grades, schools with grades 7 to 12, which is essentially what we would be accomplishing by housing this new middle school up by the high school campus, that we would have coordination and connections between our upper middle school students and the high school. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that we've shared in our numerous town forums that we've done, community forums, basically comparing the 2 options that have been on the table. And I'll just walk you through these quickly. There are pros and cons for the one on the left being for the new elementary school and the one on the right for the new 7th and 8th grade school with the preschool wing. So on the left side, the pros for the elementary school is it does provide the 26 new classrooms that are needed that were identified by our DRA space needs study 3 years ago. It continues with our current configuration. It does provide one less transition that would be required for students than our other option. And it enables us to restore those art, music, gym, and other rooms that have been converted to classrooms in our current situation. The cons are that this doesn't really address overcrowding that we're experiencing with the enrollment as it's moved up at either the middle or the high school. As Sean mentioned, it requires that we would have to redistrict all of our elementary schools. And it would require funds to upgrade the remaining 4 schools to achieve parity among all of our elementary schools. And then for the middle school option, the pros are, again, that it would provide between 24 and 26 new classrooms, so it would meet our space needs in that way. This addresses overcrowding at all of our grade levels without redistricting. It brings together the students from across town 1 year earlier, which we see as a positive, so that the diversity that exists in our community will all come together one year younger and have the opportunity to be together in the 5th and 6th grade, the sort of lower middle school, and then up into the upper middle school for 4 years as they get to be together. It has the potential for expanded opportunities for 8th graders who both either academically and or athletically may be able to participate in high school programs and opportunities. And it also provides an increased opportunity for our Milton High School child study students to come down to the preschool classrooms and participate. And we know how much we love that program that's been hiatus during the pandemic, but we're excited about the opportunities there for our child study students in our child study program. And the cons for this option are that it does require the additional transition for our students, and it would be something that we would need to think about and plan for and address. And there's concern as another possibility that we might have negative impact on parent involvement, and that again would be something that we would need to address. Next slide, please. And then last is just some questions that have come up for us to think about, will a grade configuration increase or decrease parent involvement, and how might we address that? How will the presence or absence of older students affect younger students being together? What are the opportunities for interaction between age groups? What equity opportunities might be offered with either configuration? How would education programming for 5th graders best be handled? How will families manage an additional transition, and how can we support families with that? And what might we be able to learn from other districts who've reorganized their grade configurations? And I think I'll pass it back to you, Sean.
Perfect. So what what we've presented so far has been previously presented to you guys as a committee. Part of what we wanted to update you to tonight is kind of our community and staff engagement that we've been doing that dates back to the fall. Let's see. There we go. So initially, once we identified the land and we had these kind of conceptual options that were there, we wanted to meet with the neighbors of Blue Hills Parkway, Pine Tree Brook, and Home Inc. So we met with them early on in September and October to get some feedback from them, and we'll share that in a minute. We followed on in February with a staff forum presenting these options also and going over the floor plans that you've seen before. And then more recently, we've done community forums kind of spread out across the entire community to get feedback from them. So the initial meeting that we had with the neighborhood associations that are near the school, you can see that Pine Tree Brook, Blue Hills Parkway were all pretty well represented. Home Inc. wasn't, but we've been doing kind of one-on-one meetings with them because they're direct abutters. And then the second image that you see there is essentially a word cloud. We utilized an application called Slido, which some of you might be familiar with. It's a polling application online. So what I allowed as we were meeting with people to get real-time feedback of what they were doing. The question we asked consistently to everybody is, given that we want the best for the students, what attribute would you like to see integrated into a new educational facility? And as people populated these word clouds, they could like different words that would make them go larger. So as you can see here, diversity was the big one, along with a slew of others. The second meeting of the same group of people, as you can see, Pine Tree Brook, Blue Hills Parkway, and others that were there. Similar word cloud for the same question: flexibility, outdoor space, technology. The community forums that we've done, that we reached out a little bit further, we hadn't developed the options for the school yet, so we didn't present that third question that you're seeing here to the neighbors at that time. It was just more of an informational session for them. So as we did these recent community forums, the first question we asked them in the upper left is, do you have kids in the schools? Trying to understand what our audience was. We then repeated the same second question that you see there for the word cloud. And then finally, as we closed the meeting, after all the Q&A that we did, in all of these meetings, we stayed on as long as we could to answer every question. And there were hundreds of questions that we've gone through and responded to live, so it was interesting. At the end, at the conclusion of all the Q&A, we presented them with the options of, a new middle school, a new elementary school. Option 3 is other, where I've offered my email to talk to people directly if they have other ideas, or do nothing. So in this poll, as you can see, it was 88%. The second community forum, same thing. I believe it's 88%. It's kind of hidden behind the poll of people that are up on my screen. And then finally, as I mentioned, we did one specifically for the staff. We had 109 participants, and the polling participants, again, I can't see it because it's behind my the screen of your folks on the Zoom. But you can see we were all represented from the elementary school, the middle school, and high school. And the major player for them was smaller class size. So, up to this point, we have done a lot of community engagement. We've talked with staff. I've been meeting one-on-one with folks of the neighborhoods to kind of go through. So the part we're at now, the critical part we're at now, we've got an article for town meeting to go over the site. As you may be aware previously, we looked for sites around the town. We did an RFP for land. We had 0 responses. We dove into the available parcels of land that were out there, and 72% of them were below 4 acres. And then essentially the remaining 30 parcels that just wasn't there. The schools take up part of them, the parks take up part of them, and the remaining were town hall, police headquarters, and that kind of left us with conservation land. Our initial, when we were spitballing ideas 3 years ago when we first started as a committee, we're trying to figure out where we wanted to put this. And the one that rose to the top was St. Mary's of the Hills. It was an existing school. It operates as a school. The traffic, it kind of worked well, but the Archdiocese wasn't open to us taking it over and doing a ground lease. So, we moved on. We looked across the street to Kelly Field and said, can we take a portion of Kelly Field and do it? But I think the appetite within the town to convert an active recreation field to school probably wouldn't been received well, so we moved on from that one. We did talk with the Archdiocese about a potential lot of land that's next to St. Pius. The problem with that one, it was only about 3.5 acres. And as you'll see from our initial concepts where we're working with 7 acres, 3.5 was just too small of a parcel. The last one that we looked at was the biggest parcel was up off Access Road, and you'll actually hear about this a little bit more in our land swap. But this parcel didn't really work for us that well, mainly due to topography, some vernal pools that we found out afterwards that were up there, and then also some ancient artifacts that would have caused construction on the site to be troublesome. So that's kind of how we came around to a parcel of land that we found at Gile Road. The parcel exists right now as it expands across Gile Road and goes up along the brook, what we call the hockey stick parcel. The parcel we're looking to swap out or claim is the parcel in yellow, and it's roughly about 6.8 acres. We've done a boundary survey right now with BSC Group as part of another project with the town to get the exact boundaries or the coordinates of what that land would be. So we're working with that. So that's leading us to, our proposed article for the land swap and kind of the past meetings I've had. The article that you see here, and I won't bother you reading it, but essentially it composes of 3 parts. The first part is taking that yellow parcel that we just looked at previously out of conservation land and transferring 3 other parcels into conservation land. So those are the 2 parts. The third portion of this article is allowing our town to petition the state to execute that swap. So as I talked about, that hockey stick portion of the area or the existing parcel that we have is going to remain conservation land. We would just be swapping out the yellow portion or the southern portion by Gile Road. What we've identified by working with the town are 2 adjacent parcels on Herrick Drive that would be offered up that are currently non-conservation land and would be converted to conservation land. The parcel I talked about that we looked at for the school originally by the Access Road and Randolph Ave, essentially across the street from the carriage house, is about a 30-acre parcel, 2/3 of which right now is already conservation land. So the middle portion that we'd be offering up there would get converted to conservation land and essentially unify the entire parcel. For our land swap, the way it's working with the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, I'm finally getting that acronym or that name of that agency down. They have a ratio of basically every acre we take of conservation land, we have to give up more. So, well, some people might talk about this proposal as we're taking conservation land. We're actually not. We're swapping it out and we're giving back more than we're actually taking. So that's a key component that we're looking at. The land that we're utilizing had deed restrictions that were currently part of that before. But working with town council, there were a 30-year limitation for those under Mass General Law that have expired as of 2008. So currently there are no deed restrictions on there. We met with Conservation Commission the other night. We're doing a site walk a week from this Saturday. And our hope is to kind of get their blessing for this overall parcel trade. And with that, I'll open it up to question and answers.
So Ada, thank you, Sean. This is like a full-time job for you.
Something according to that. It's almost over though, once we get going.
We really can't thank you enough as a community, as a committee for all the work that you've done. So we really appreciate the whole committee's work and particularly the amount of time you're putting in to engage the community. So Ada, I don't know if you want to take questions. How do you want to proceed from this moment? The floor is yours right now.
Well, what I'm looking for tonight is as you can see, things are happening with this project. We're really starting to move forward, and we're hopefully will be able to acquire this parcel of land to build upon, which was the #1 question that everybody wanted to know when we talked about building a new school in the first place. So if we are to solve that, answer that question, we are in good shape. The second question is that we often get is how much will it cost? And that's something that we need to really look at and be able to evaluate and to be able to bring that forward to the town. And one of the factors in that is knowing what kind of school we're building. And so because of that, what I'm hoping school committee will be able to do tonight is to make a vote or take a vote on make a decision about the grade configuration for this school, whether we'll go with option 1, which is the elementary school, which is what the school committee voted on 3 years ago, early on in this project, or what has evolved and come out of the last 3 years of work, the new middle school option of the grade 7th and 8th grade and the preschool classrooms in that building. I have a motion that we could consider. I could put that forward and then we could have discussion on that if you'd like me to start that way. Chair Eberhard, it's up to
Sure,
you.
that's fine. I see that Dr. Carroll has her hand up. So I don't know if we want to see what Dr. Carroll has to say first, and then we can put the motion on the floor.
Sure.
Thanks. I have a question, and you tell me if this is something that should happen after we approve the motion. Also, Sean, thank you for all the time you patiently spend attending our meetings before you actually get to present, which always seems like 2 hours every time. So I guess my question is, with Holly and Bill here, I was just curious sort of what their perspectives are on the question of the transition and for them for the 5th, 6th grade school model. And I don't know if we should ask them to participate in the next part of the discussion or if I should ask that question now, but just curious what their thoughts are on that piece.
I think in order to follow proper protocol and procedure, we should put the motion on the floor and open it for discussion and then ask for the opinions of our experts here on the panel. So
that'd be great. And that's exactly why we asked them to join us and stay with us. So thank you for being here. So I'd like to make a motion and move that the school committee recommend to the school building committee that the construction of a freestanding grade 7 to 8 school, which will include a pre-K school wing, is the preferred educational objective of the Milton School Committee.
And I'd like to second that.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, we will open the floor for discussion then. Member Rosemary, do you want to coordinate the discussion, or you want me to?
Sure. I'd like to pass Dr. Carroll's question on to Principal Fish or Principal McCann, and if you can address that question of transition, that would be wonderful.
Sure. It's a question that came up during several of the forums, and the way that I responded to that then is similar to how I respond now. We have a problem and a dilemma that we need to address with regard to our overcrowding, and there's no perfect solution to how we do that. While the proposal on the table does introduce an additional transition, the time that we have to plan for that, I believe, is an asset for us, in being able to leverage the expertise of our upper elementary educators and our middle school educators, as well as our families, in figuring out what makes the most sense for our children and for our families, is something that I think can allow us to really be on the leading edge of a change like this. And in the slide, that was shown in the presentation, there are a handful of schools in the Commonwealth that have made this transition. And I think that we also have an opportunity to learn from some of those, some of which I think are relatively close by. But the transition is certainly something, Dr. Carroll, that has garnered a great deal of conversation, as it deserves. But I think that the primary challenge that we're dealing with right now is the overcrowding, and I believe that this proposal helps to alleviate that. And then the work begins around with a student-facing and family-facing portion of sort of what's next in terms of making a change in our grade configuration.
Thank you. Holly, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think Bill and I are definitely on the same page, but as an elementary principal, when this idea was first brought to light, it actually hurt a little bit. The idea of me losing the 5th grade is something that's hard to accept. It's a very special year in the elementary school and all of the special events that come with the 5th grade. And just watching them grow in that year is a gift. So at first it was one that I wasn't ready to entertain, but the more I think about it, grade 5 is a transitional year anyway in the elementary school. This is a year that our 5th graders come together. They integrate French and English for 70% of the day. If we provide opportunities for them to have at least 2 teachers to change classrooms, to go to their locker, all in a concerted effort to get them ready for middle school. So it essentially is a transitional year anyway. It's just within our building. The idea of 5th and 6th graders together actually really maximizes expertise in that field, especially around social emotional health. I don't think it's very easy being a 5th or a 6th grader, and to put all of that expertise in one place to support those students and give them space to learn and grow together as middle school students is pretty powerful. I think I would envision a lot of time using our 5th and 6th grade teachers, as well as our curriculum coordinators, to design a model that would be efficient and also developmentally appropriate to support their needs. This is a time where we really need to focus on executive functioning skills and emotional health, physical health, and to put all of that expertise in one building, I think would be a great support to students. So I think a lot of thought has to go into it, but I do believe that we have the current staff employed by us. We just need to rethink where exactly the perfect staff needs to go in the perfect building. So I think, although it's one more transition as a physical space, I think all the support around this transition would maximize it.
And I also think, Holly, I appreciate you bringing up, but when you talk about narrowing the grade span to 5 and 6 and really putting those experts there, I think that is a huge opportunity. And I also think around the question around transition, one of the big concerns for families as their 5th graders getting ready for 6th grade is, they're going into a bigger school now with students who are a lot older and a lot bigger. And there's that component to it that by narrowing the ages of the children attending that school, I think that is you're putting students who are more developmentally similar in the same building across the board versus having this wider span.
Okay, thank you very much.
Could I just add one more thing with our specific model? When you think about the transition to middle from 8th grade to high school, that's a big deal. But to have students closer to that campus and being able to come in and out of different athletic fields and other spaces would absolutely ease the transition from 8th to 9th as well. And just maximizing, the child study program. And we need teachers. We need to be growing our teachers in high school, and we need to provide that experience for them while they're here with us. So getting that opportunity back in the hands of our high school students, and the idea of walking to and from those campuses, getting to know the physical space and the staff is half the battle with the transition. And I think this type of model offers more frequent opportunities before the big day.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Member White?
So I was just going to say that, I worked in an elementary school that was 1 through 5 for 20 years. And yes, they were 5th graders that were anxious about the transition to middle school. But more than the kids, the parents were very anxious about it. I think I spent more time soothing parents' nerves than I did even the kids' nerves. But I kind of think that the idea of a 5th and 6th grade together would be less intimidating for parents even to think about, because it's a smaller cohort of students together. It's less intimidating to have 2 grades in the building rather than 3 grades in the building. So I actually think in many ways it might be an easier transition with the way that we're thinking about it in this way. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
One other thing I had hoped to mention, but I forgot to mention, is in our district specifically, it takes going to Pierce Middle School to get that truly rich, diverse experience that our town has to offer. For many people, sixth grade is the first time they're in a very diverse experience. So to be able to offer that a year earlier feels like an important opportunity to name.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Member Rostani?
Well, Betty, I was one of those nervous parents. I grew up, 5th and 6th grade was a traditional elementary setting with one teacher. So the idea of having a 6th grader go through an entire day was very nerve-wracking for me. Is our assumption that the 5th grade experience at this middle school setting will be similar to what it is now, or will they go class to class? If you've mentioned it earlier, I apologize if I missed it.
I think that's something that we would need to figure out. I think we have the expertise already employed by us, but I would really want to rely on our directors of curriculum to help us make decisions and plan like that. We have, there's a different certification involved in elementary and in middle school. And so we would really need to look at the qualifications of the staff that we have and the expertise that we have. Many of our teachers are dually certified or are certified straight up through grade 8, K to 8. Some are certified K to 6. So I think we have the ability to make a situation like this happen with our current staff, but I would want to look at the talents of this current staff we have and use the expertise we have in the district by way of curriculum coordinators to help us design a model that would maximize student instructional time. Earlier tonight, I talked about our jump in science grades, and it was a clear dedication to time on task and specific teachers teaching specific content. All of that would be brought into light when making decisions like this. So I don't think it's a decision. I don't think I could respond right now and say exactly what it should be, but I think we could definitely do it with the staff we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's hard to commit right now to exactly what that be, but Beverly, that's something that I know I've thought about. Does it make sense for it to be, would 5th grade be the traditional 5th grade model with one or two, depending on the strand or the whether it's a student in English innovations pathway or French immersion, or does it look like a traditional 6th, 7th, 8th grade model where it's the 4 team teachers, or is it somewhere in between? Is it an ELA or French in social studies, like is it 2-person teams where it's a humanities person and a math and science person? And I think that it's an exciting opportunity to just to think about how we might further smoothen that transition. But there's also something to be said for considering the traditional team model where you're bringing in, like to Holly's point, the expertise, having subject level expertise and increasing instructional time and time on learning across the board, especially in social studies and science, which you do see that uptick in 6th grade and the amount of instruction students are getting there. So I think it's impossible to say definitively what is best right now, but I think that we do have, to Holly's point, the personnel to figure it out, but also the responsibility to our community to work with our families to make a thoughtful and conscious decision about what makes the most sense for our kids.
Thank you both.
Yes, thank you. It was a great question, Beverly. It's one that's been on a lot of our minds. And I wonder whether Superintendent Jett or Assistant Superintendent Sheehan might have any thoughts on this that you want to share from your own perspectives of having been involved at all of these grade levels. Feel free.
So the first thing I was going to say, and I put my hand down because Holly Concannon touched upon it, is this certification. It does have implications because years ago, middle school students that had the general ed certification up to grade 6 had to get certified in specific content areas in order to move forward to teach. So it does have certification implications. You remember, Rosemary, and you know where I stand when we talked about the 7-8 being close to the high school campus. It affords us an opportunity to alleviate pressure in all buildings. 8th grade being close to the high school. We have waivers for athletics. We have opportunities for transitions, exposing students to that college level experience a little bit earlier. We talked about the pre-K program. People may not know this, a few years ago, we had a pre-K program, but it only supported about 15 students at the high school with 15 younger students in the class. Can you imagine 15 high school students in with 15 pre-K students? Is a lot. Having that pre-K campus affords us the opportunity to expose more high school students to the pre-K program, being a support, but also alleviating some of the pressure because now they can walk down the street to that new facility. I agree with Dr. Fish in terms of developmentally. As a former middle school vice principal and principal, we did a lot of work to help with the transitioning of elementary to the middle school by developing that Welcome to Middle School camp to give them that exposure. And it is a big transition. I don't want to speak for the sixth graders now. I remember being there and you'd be in the hallway and it looked like a tornado had gone through the hallway because they're so anxious to carry everything. And that's where you get the complaints about the book bags because the students will carry everything that they need. But extracting one grade and keeping it close in age makes for a better, or could possibly make for a better experience. And then the final piece about the exposure to the diversifying the schools at a little bit more at one grade lower. I think it's a benefit for everybody that they get that exposure. In having this model versus a standalone elementary school, I think our families who have students in pre-K who may have to make a vote on this will benefit from that. And it's a benefit for everybody who gets to experience the new facility, if that is something that's online in 4 to 6 years. So I think there's so many benefits, but I do think there are a lot of details that will have to be worked out. But the downside is we have enough time to work it out because we need these buildings sooner rather than later. But the good news is we have some time to work it out.
Assistant Superintendent Sheehan.
Well, I would just like to add that the initial proposal for a for the 5-6 configuration was a concern like that of others, and around the transitions. But I think that the way this has been presented, from the research to the pros and cons, I think that addressing all of the other issues, especially space issues for each of the schools, really really limits the concerns now and alleviates the concerns for those transitions. I think that there are just other issues that are to be addressed. I do agree that there are some implications for certification. And as Principal Concannon mentioned, we probably have the staff, but there is time to plan for updating those certifications. I think that that's something that can be addressed, but I think that the presentation was very clear, really was very helpful to help others understand the implications for this configuration.
Thank you. Sean?
Yeah, I just want to touch on one thing quickly too. I mean, the work we've done over the past 3 years, just to identify a site and find land, has been a lot of work, and we have to get this project right. After this project, I don't know where you're going to find additional land. So that's why, the amount of time and effort our committees put into this to really study it and look at it, knowing that this land is very precious. That's why we want to make sure we get it right on this project. So it was just one point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Carroll?
Thanks. Just in terms of sort of sharing what I'm thinking with my fellow school committee members, since this is our only chance to really talk about it together. I I think my response to the presentation, and I've been aware of obviously this alternative model has been an idea for some time. So we've been able to kind of process it. But I think sort of building on what you were just saying, Sean, to me, it really doesn't make sense to go through the investing in building a new building after all the work this has taken to still have overcrowding at the middle school. Like in the video, that is a problem at Pierce. So I recognize it's a less acute problem at the high school, but when the presentation kind of shows the way that simply building the new school for 7th and 8th would relieve pressure all over the place, like to me, that really then makes it hard to justify investing our limited resources as a new elementary school. That no longer makes any sense to me. I understand that it's been a journey to get to this place, and I recognize why it started with that idea. And this is, I guess why the silver lining in having been denied by the state, because it allowed you to go back to the drawing board and like think outside the box. And I'm really glad you did, because the last thing we would need is to have another conversation like soon about now what are we going to do with the Pierce. So I'm just thankful to you for thinking outside the box. And given that the research, which to me seems most important in the questions or potential cons category, the research around the transitions, given that that's mixed, then I sort of take that off the table because it's not telling me anything one way or the other about what makes sense. And so when that comes off the table, to me, it's like everything else, makes sense with this new proposal. And the parent engagement piece, I get that, sure, it will complicate things for parents who, maybe before they only had children in 2 buildings at a time, and now I have 3 buildings at a time. My colleague, Beverly Ross Denny, manages that every day right now. So it's possible to do, people do it. And I think we have time to be thoughtful about scheduling things, scheduling drop off, pickup time, like how can that all be maximized to allow efficiency for families? I think that there's no reason we couldn't be proactive and make that like as seamless with community input, obviously parents to share what their concerns are to be able to take them into account with the planning. So that's what I think.
Yeah.
I'm supporting the motion on the table, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I mean, Member Rosemary, I think that what Dr. Carroll just said and what Holly Concannon said earlier about that the lessons from the pandemic afforded us opportunities to think outside the box in different ways we might not have thought of before. That's what sort of happened with the school building project, right? And while we're thinking about the overcrowding and the space needs, it's affording us an opportunity to rethink our instructional methodology as a district and really providing opportunities to be innovative and creative. So it will be the task of future school committees to look at what that's going to look like, because, school committees are part of our, they set the direction for the district along with the superintendent. So that's going to be a really important conversation for future school committees to have with the superintendent and the leadership in the district to think about what does this look like educationally for students in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I think it's a real opportunity for the district. I look forward to seeing how it evolves and being a part of that conversation in a different way. So I think if I remember Rosemary, I think if if everyone has had a chance to say what they wanted to say, the motion has been made and seconded, and you could take a roll call vote as the chair of this committee and put that onto the record.
Okay, well, the motion has been made and seconded, and we'll take a roll call vote. I'll just go according to where I see you on the screen. Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Chair Eberhardt?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead?
Yes.
Member Rose Marin? Yes.
Well, congratulations to the school building committee, and thanks for all your work. Yay, fight on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
All right. My dear members of the school committee, it is now 10 o'clock. Oh, Dr. Carroll, would you like to say something?
Can we just mention and put in a plug that it will also now, of course, be very important heading into the town meeting for everybody to understand what this land swap is about. The facts you shared, Sean, about this, the town actually gains more conservation land than it's not losing any. And I just want to encourage all of us to, especially having seen, you know, things unfolding recently in town, I think there's so many issues that people are focused on, and it's all important, but we need to make sure people understand the facts about this article, you know, just put that out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Carroll. We have scheduled 3 forums for town meeting members and town meeting member candidates that will be sent out. There are 3 different times that people can join the forums that will be sent out from the town clerk's office to all town meeting members and candidates. And we look forward to having the opportunity to discuss this project with all of them, and to hopefully build support for our article, and hopefully ultimately acquire this parcel for a new school.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Carroll, for bringing that up to our attention. I know that is the next big important step. So we all need to be supportive and get out there in the community and educate people about the facts and what this means for the town and for the district. So thank you for reminding us that. All right, so now, my dear school committee members, it is now 10:05. We are at 3 hours in our meeting. We still have things on our agenda, and I would like to talk to all of you. You know, we have a policy actually about how long school committee meetings are supposed to go. I think it's like 9:30. Like, you're not supposed to take any new business after a certain amount of time. Dr. Carroll can review those policies in the upcoming time. So I'm wondering how you want to proceed. What we have left is opportunity for citizens speak. I don't know who's there. I wanted to briefly touch on the mid-cycle review. I know we have to vote the vendor warrants. We have to vote a policy. Yes, Dr. Carroll?
If it's just the second reading, so if people don't have questions, that should take no more than 2 minutes. And I think last time was pretty.
Okay. And then we just have to.
There's only 4 people in attendance as possible participants, if that.
Right.
Has any impact.
That's fine. Well, we could certainly put it out there if there was anyone who is currently still in attendance who would like to say anything at this moment. You could raise your hand, and we could raise you up. We could, what do you call it? Like, move you up into panelists, and you could have 3 minutes to speak or address the committee around a policy or issue that was concerning to you. I don't know if anyone's out there who has hung on this long and wanted to say something. I would not want to deny you that opportunity.
So there's 4 people on. If anyone wishes to raise their hand and make a comment, I'll be happy to elevate you to speak. While you're thinking about pressing the button, I'll give it about 30 more seconds.
Thank you, Superintendent Chen.
Although I said 30 seconds, there's no one raising their hands.
That's fine. Thank
Okay.
you, Superintendent. I really appreciate it. Okay, so the next thing on the report is just a brief check-in on the mid-cycle review. You should never use me as an example of how to conduct this process. I'm doing a bye to Holly, bye Dr. Fish. Thank you so much for coming. But I know that Superintendent Judd submitted a document answering some of the questions that we asked the last time. I would ask you all to review the document and to begin to write a summary of your thoughts about where the district is based on that, all the documents that are in the folder that I sent you, and then submit that to me to try to compile. I'm just going to try to find my calendar by maybe March, or I don't know what to say, the 17th, like maybe by the week of by the 30th, so that I could have time to compile things and then share them with the superintendent before we discuss them at the school committee meeting on the 6th. We have to discuss that though with me. So I'm happy to check in with like 2 of you at a time about that. So as I said before, do not use me as an example, but please review the document and then put together a document with your thoughts about where we are. I've been trying to do a little bit that myself and thinking about the whole year in addition to the things we asked for. All right. So that's all I have to say. Dr. Carroll, we would love to hear about this.
Sure. This will be very quick because the policy subcommittee has not met since our last school committee meeting. So I have nothing new to report on. We are just looking for a second reading of policy IC. Going to pull up my motions. Sorry, I have too many windows. So I'd like to make a motion, then we can see if there's any discussion. But the motion would be to approve the second reading of policy IC, the school year calendar policy. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. So you all have the attachment. Did anybody have any questions or comments since we read this at the last meeting 2 weeks ago? Okay, then I'll just take a roll call vote to approve this motion and the revisions to policy IC. Member Rosemary?
Yes.
Chair Eberhardt?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
And Dr. Craig had dropped off.
Yeah, she had to leave.
I'm a yes. I'm a yes. So she would be an abstention. And thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And that concludes policy for tonight.
All right. Member White, you are up with the finance subcommittee report for approval of vendor warrants.
Sure. Just want to say that last week we met with the warrant committee subcommittee on schools. 3 members submitted questions and 1 member of the subcommittee did not. But Amy Dexter worked hard and did a wonderful job answering 44 questions from 3 members. The rest of the warrant committee did not submit questions, and typically, because I've served in the warrant committee twice, the past practice was always that everybody would give their questions to the school subcommittee, and then we would have time to prepare the answers and respond. That wasn't the way they did it this time. So I know that we've been invited to another meeting with the warrant committee next week on Wednesday evening. So we'll see how that goes. And, we'll see how that goes. There's 2 warrants that are, that we're going to vote on tonight. The first one, we can do them together, is warrant number 37, payable on 3/10/2022 in the amount of $507,195.21, and warrant number 38, which is payable 3/17/2022 in the amount of $471,601.62. Can I have a second for those? Member Rose Marin,
Yes.
Chair Everhart,
Yes.
Member Beverly Ross Denny.
Yeah.
Okay. Member Dr. Carroll.
Yes.
Okay, I'm a yes, and we'll have Elaine Craig, Dr. Craig being abstained.
Right. Member White,
And
is
that's it.
when is the next meeting of when has the school committee been invited to go to the warrant committee?
Next Wednesday.
What is next Wednesday? I apologize for not knowing the date. Do you know the date? Let me look it up. Hold on.
Yeah, hold on a second.
Next Wednesday is the
It's the 23rd.
23rd, yeah.
And that will be, people can zoom in to watch that if it's available in a televised meeting?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay.
Amy, did you want to speak a little bit about, there was one issue that came up with the warrant committee questions that you made a correction on. I thought it would be helpful to speak on that tonight, if it's okay.
Sure. I assume you're talking about the salary question.
Yes, thank you.
Right. Yeah, and I just also want to mention that I didn't have an opportunity to answer all of the questions on one of the lists that from my standpoint weren't financial and I couldn't answer. So I think there's some confusion behind why those weren't answered. So I just wanted to mention that. But the item that Member White is speaking about was there was a question regarding the superintendent's salary increase from what was budgeted for fiscal 22. And what happened was when Superintendent Jett was named interim, it was late August was the date of the contract. And the contract amount was for a salary equivalent to 10 months of the year. When the budget was put together in the fall of 2020, right after that happened, the budgeted amount in the spreadsheet was entered at the 10-month salary amount, not the annualized 12-month amount. So when you compare 22 to 23, it appears as if that position was given an extremely large wage adjustment or salary increase of somewhere around 24%. There's been some discussion about that outside of that meeting in the public that I've answered some questions to. That is not the case. So I just wanted to put that out there. The wage adjustment for the superintendent's contract from fiscal 22 to 23 is 2.5%, not 25%.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Can I just ask a quick clarification about that? So
Sure.
just to make sure it's totally clear, was that just like a clerical error essentially on the part of the person who entered that in?
Yes, because they weren't aware
it was a change from Mr. Jett's previous contract that was a 10-month?
No. So when
Amy, do you mind if I explain?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make sure it's like on the record as totally.
Yeah.
If it's a clerical error, that's like, that explains the, yeah.
If you look at every leadership position, they typically have more than your typical 183, 184 days that our teachers do. My contract as a principal started July 1st, 2020. So I worked for 2 months under my principal's contract. I assumed the position for the interim superintendent on August 27th. 2020. So that's where the 10 months went from August 27th until June 30th. And if I could elaborate a little bit more about some of the speculation about possible positions going to that salary, that was not 100% accurate. If folks remember, my appointment for full-time superintendent came in January 22nd, if I'm not mistaken, 2021. my contract negotiated and signed on March 31st, 2021. So that just sums it up. But I think if people took the initial contract, divided it by the 10 months, see what that is, and then multiply that divided amount by 12 months, you would see that it's not a 24, 25, 27, or whatever it was percentage increase.
Yeah, I think, thank you. Yeah, Amy. Oh, sorry, Betty.
No, go ahead. Amy, you're muted.
Just wanted to also add one thing as a follow-up to that. If someone were to compare the budget for fiscal 21 to fiscal 22, they would have seen a very large decrease in the superintendent's salary. And that wasn't noticed wasn't brought up as a discussion point in that year. So if somebody wanted to go back, they'd see that the salary that Superintendent Jett is at is consistent where that type of position would be compensated at. It's not out of the ordinary at all.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean.
All right, thank you for explaining that, and thank you, James, for speaking about that as well. Okay.
Thank you all.
And
of
that's
you
it for finance.
for answering 44 questions that we have all we've discussed multiple times at school committee meetings and are in the budget book, and we've and particularly to this question, like I know for a fact that about the salary because we talked about it with the lawyer and he all explained it to us when we were negotiating and the contract and the 10 months and the 12 months. And, you know, it's something that we were very much aware of. And I'm grateful to anyone who pointed out and noticed that discrepancy so that we could clarify that. That was helpful. Right now we know that was a clerical error, and we appreciate that. But I really can't thank you enough. It's like you're doing the work 3 times over. When we have really had so many rich conversations at school committee around all of this. So anyway, all right. Thank you so much. Yes, Ada.
Make just one more comment about something that was discussed that I just want to also clarify is about our strategic plan. And we have had a strategic plan in place for at least 3 years, 3.5 years, I believe, that has guided the direction of the district and has set goals, and the goals for our annual goals as well as district specific plans have been guided by that strategic plan. That plan went through a process this past year for revising it and focusing it under new leadership of Superintendent Jett. And we will be bringing that updated plan to our April 6th meeting for discussion and presentation and hopefully a vote by the school committee. But as you can see, there's been quite a bit of involvement in the development of that plan by the district leadership team. And we've already seen 2 of our school presentations, including the one tonight by Principal Concannon, that are thoroughly aligned with the new strategic plan. So I just want to be perfectly clear that we do know about strategic planning, and we have an exciting new updated one coming in April. The old one will be retired at that point. Thank you.
Superintendent Jett?
Yes, very quickly, the current one before the new one is approved was from 2017 and it expires at the end of this year. But anytime you do any planning, we arguably encountered the biggest disruption in educational history, or at least in my educational experience, that required us to really be reflective and go back and recalibrate and say, what are the biggest points right now? And so the new plan is going to be one of which is consolidated, concise, and more focused to address some of the things that we've seen prior to the pandemic during the pandemic, and more importantly, what do we need to do after the pandemic? So I just share that as well.
Yeah, I think that multiple, to your point, Ada, multiple site councils have reflected the new strategic plan. So, yep, it's all out there for you to find if you're looking for it. All right, Member Rossini, I would love to hear about curriculum and instruction from you and Dr. Ms. Sheehan and Dr. Carroll.
This will be really fast because you've heard a lot of the content. So this meeting was in February 17th, and the 3 agenda items were a follow-up on a question about Judaism in our curriculum, an overview of the new elementary math curriculum, as well as a question we received during the school committee meeting on the restorative justice work. We learned, and feel free, Janet, if any one of these things is said incorrectly, please stop me. Judaism is present in the elementary curriculum when covering cultural holidays like Kwanzaa and Hanukkah. It also appears in the middle school in terms of referencing the Holocaust. But we don't have a discrete topic on organized religions that you would see in a college or a comparative religion that you'd see in a college or university. And if anything, I think as we are going to meet next Thursday with the high school social studies program director, it's getting late, so if I say anything wrong, forgive me. And at that point, we can revisit in her plans for updating the curriculum, whether or not that's present. Second, the math curriculum update. The good thing is between Brian Selig and some of the information that Dr. Carroll and I added, he basically covered what was shared in the meeting, but he had more in-depth conversation with us. This was a smaller group. As you know, he started 2 years ago. They did utilize ed reports and curate to identify research-based curriculums. They're in the process of actively vetting several curriculum, and they're using a rubric. They're using actually 2 rubrics to help evaluate amongst a team of teachers that are actually vetting the new math curriculum. And the third topic, which was restorative justice, the question was, where is this work going? Where did it come from? That type of question, which was what we learned after Susan Maselli's presentation, and a lot of it she mentioned earlier today, was that the restorative justice work was initiated in response to DESE identifying African-American and Black students at risk for disproportionality for school disciplinary removals. It just so happens to be the same subgroup that has been flagged for disproportionality in special education referrals for communication. So she has been able to use very specific federal aid to address this. And the goal is to dramatically reduce or eliminate the disproportionality of African-American students that are identified for disciplinary removals. So Pupil Personnel Services created a comprehensive plan using the DESE Planning for Success model in response to the discipline work. And restorative justice is one of the primary strategies that they're using to achieve this goal. That work includes the restorative justice coach, I'm going to say her name, Adina Schechter, who's been who already visited all the elementary schools, and she's actively planning workshops to introduce the topic to each one of those school communities. She's also been funding the professional development for restorative practices for all MPS school administrators. She explained that I want to say that the few faculty that have not completed the training yet is because there has been turnover in the role, but she anticipates they all would have at least started it by the summer. And one of her goals with the restorative justice coach is to establish relationships amongst the faculty so that they feel comfortable implementing restorative practices independently. I'm trying to think if there's anything else worthy mentioning. I think she covered some of the details that I would have shared early in her presentation, so I'll stop there. But if there are any questions, feel free to ask. And Janet, if there's anything, Assistant Superintendent Sheen, if there's anything you want to add, please do so.
No, that's great. Thank you for the update. I really we're getting a lot of really rich updates from your work on the curriculum and advisory committee. And we did have a question from a community member about the MCAS, and I think I forwarded it to all of you. And maybe I'll circle back with you guys to the chat. She asked some interesting questions about MCAS and its measurement and the district and how schools are rated and curriculum. And I just sort of think that there's a lot of, MCAS has changed its, the way it looks and how it's administered and what, and I just think maybe having some conversations around that in the community to help them understand that and how Milton is rated based on that or whatever would probably be helpful. I don't know.
No, she actually reached out to me.
Oh, she did. Okay, perfect. That's good.
Okay. But I do think the points you're making are very relevant. And I think many people may not be aware of formative versus summative assessments.
Correct. Right.
So all this wonderful work that MPS has done on unfinished learning, although it might actually be an opportunity for a community forum to educate the public, because I think there are a group of people who actually don't realize the gains that have been made this year. And I would hate for us to end the school year with people not recognizing the significant and successful work that our teachers have engaged in to catch all these students up. And it's well worth a community forum of some type to give them the information.
I thought that would be really great, especially that I thought her question was, it was interesting that her question, and I thought it really made me think about like people focusing too much on not too much, focusing on that because that's what's in the media and that's what's presented to them to absorb and understand. But there's just so much else we can talk about. So, okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, our last item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of our February 16, 2022 meeting and our minutes of March 2nd, 2022. Did everyone have a chance to read them over? Did anyone have any changes or additions they would like to have to those minutes? Yes, Ada.
I just wanted to make a comment. I wanted to thank Maureen Kennedy for her thorough, really thorough minutes on our meetings. And I think our process between Maureen and Charlene Roach, being able to give us a chance to review the minutes, make any edits before they come to the meeting for approval. I think that's a good process. And now that I understand that, I'll look forward to that moving forward.
I can't thank them enough either. It's a lot of work. It's much appreciated. And it's a very important record to have because you go back and reference them when people have questions. So, all right. So there's a motion on the table to approve the minutes of February 16th and March 2nd, 2022. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I'll take a roll call vote. Member White?
Yes.
Member Rosteni?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
And Member Eberhardt, yes. And Dr. Carroll is, Dr. Cargetta has left. So that's an abstention. All right, our next meeting, our agenda items will be a presentation from the Strategic Planning Committee, and we will have our open budget meeting, our open budget hearing. I believe that'll be like a half hour before the meeting, but I'll definitely talk to Superintendent Jett and Charlene and everyone else and Amy about what that's going to look like, Superintendent Dexter. Is there anything else that we need to think about? Oh, and the Pierce Heights Middle School is supposed to come. I don't know. I'll talk to Charlene about that. I don't know. Didn't they already come? No, they didn't come. This one we heard from them, no? Okay. Well, if you think of any agenda items or things you'd like to add, please let me know. Entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
All right, Member Rosteni?
Yes.
Member Rosemarin?
Yes, please.
Dr. Carroll, yes, please.
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
And Member Eberhardt, yes. Thank you all. I'm so sorry, 10:30, but we did a lot of really great work tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Have a great night. Take care.